Welcome back, my friends, to Beyond Earth Stories. Today is a rainy, storm-swept day. As I sit here listening to the rhythm of raindrops on the roof and the steady hum of the wind, I cannot help but think of rain in its most ancient form. The first storms that fell upon a newborn Earth. They were not gentle like this one, not nourishing, not calm. They were torrents of steam condensing from an atmosphere thick with volcanic breath falling onto a world of fire. And so on this stormy day, let us return together to the beginning. Let us travel back to the Hadean Eon, the first age of Earth, when our planet was still young, molten, and raw. This is where our story truly begins. When I close my eyes and allow my thoughts to drift backward through time, the world as I know it dissolves. Mountains sink, oceans vanish, forests, and cities are stripped away layer by layer until nothing familiar remains. The clock runs in reverse millions, then billions of years, and I arrive in an alien place that is still Earth, though unrecognizable. The Hadean Eon, some 4.5 to 4 billion years ago, was a time of chaos. Imagine a planet still forming its surface, molten, its crust thin and unstable, constantly torn open by volcanism. Rivers of lava stretched across landscapes that were never still. Asteroids and comets rained down in violent bombardments, their impacts carving out enormous basins, their energy shaking the entire world. To stand here, if one could, would be to stand in the heart of fire itself. The sky was not blue. Instead, it was filled with ash and gases, carbon dioxide, methane, ammonia, water vapor, nitrogen, poured out endlessly by volcanoes. There was no breathable air, no soft clouds drifting lazily above, no calm weather. Instead, the heavens boiled with storms of lightning and the glow of meteors. The air must have been thick, heavy, and acrid, a constant reminder that life had not yet claimed this world. And yet, beneath this chaos, order was already emerging. The Earth was differentiating, its heavy iron sinking inward, forming a dense core, while lighter silicates floated upward, solidifying into a mantle and a primitive crust. This was the first architecture of our planet, the hidden scaffolding upon which everything else would one day stand. I imagine myself standing on a cooling plain of basalt, though in truth no human could survive here. The heat shimmers in the air, the horizon glows with erupting mountains, and the ground quakes with each new impact from space. The sound must have been deafening, a planet groaning as it shaped itself. The silence of modern Earth with its birdsong and breezes did not exist. Here sound was the roar of fire and the crash of falling stone. Somewhere in this early epoch, Earth endured one of the most defining events of its entire history, the colossal impact of a Mars-sized body we call Theia. The collision was cataclysmic. Rock vaporized on impact, molten material ejected into orbit. Out of this chaos, the Moon was born, a companion that would forever shape tides, stabilize Earth's tilt, and whisper its silver light upon the oceans yet to come. Without that collision, our story might never have unfolded. It is a strange thought that destruction gave birth to the very partner that makes Earth habitable. From violence came balance. From chaos, a kind of fragile order. I find in this a lesson not only of geology, but of philosophy. Even in the most violent beginnings, there is the potential for creation, for harmony, hidden within ruin. As millions of years passed, the surface began to cool, though it was far from gentle. Oceans of magma hardened into crust, though still pierced by constant eruptions. Above, steam condensed and fell back as rain. Endless rain falling for centuries, carving rivers through still forming rock. Slowly, oceans began to gather in basins formed by impact craters and tectonic depressions. The first seas scalding hot, perhaps acidic, but seas nonetheless. And here I pause. For in these waters, in their chemistry, in the dance of heat and minerals from hydrothermal vents, the first whispers of life's possibility began. Not yet life as we know it, but the stage upon which it might someday appear. To think that in these violent storms in this molten world, the conditions were being laid for everything that would follow. Forests, animals, civilizations, even us, is to feel a deep humility. The earth did not begin gentle, but it began fertile. Its chaos was not empty, but filled with potential. When I listen to the storm outside my window today, I imagine those first rains falling, not on fields or rivers, but on seas of fire. I imagine them cooling the stone filling the craters, carrying minerals into new chemical unions. Each drop a part of the long alchemy that would one day yield life. And so here in the Hadean, we see the paradox of beginnings. A world too violent for life was already shaping the conditions that would one day invite it. Fire and water, destruction and renewal, order and chaos woven together in the first chapter of Earth's long story. The rains continued falling for centuries, perhaps millennia, until the heat of the planet softened and great oceans began to collect in basins deep and wide. Imagine those first seas not calm and blue as we see them now, but dark, hot, restless. Their surfaces roiled with steam, their depths churning with minerals leached from volcanic rock. Every river of molten basalt that met the water hissed and cracked, sending clouds of vapor into the already heavy sky. These oceans were laboratories, vast experiments in chemistry, stirred by tides that the newborn moon was already pulling into rhythm. Standing here in thought, I try to hear that rhythm, the first tidal songs of Earth. They must have been stronger than ours today, for the moon was closer then, and its pull was fierce. Twice each day, water surged and withdrew, pounding against shores of black rock. Each motion of the tide was a stirring of ingredients, a mixing of minerals, salts, and gases. In those endless cycles of ebb and flow, chemistry edged closer to biology, matter edged closer to life. Yet for millions of years, the planet was still a place of fire. Volcanoes tore open the crust without rest, pouring basalt across the surface, shaping islands that rose only to crumble back into the seas. The air was thick with carbon dioxide, with methane, with sulfur. To breathe, it would be impossible. Yet this atmosphere trapped heat and shielded the surface from the harshest radiation of the young sun. This sky, though deadly to us, was part of the alchemy. Without it, the seas might never have held their warmth, and life might never have stirred. I imagine the smell of that world, acrid metallic, the tang of sulfur and burning stone. The sky perhaps glowed red with dust and gas, the sun, a dim disk struggling through the haze. Lightning cracked across the clouds, striking the seas with bolts of energy. Each strike split molecules apart, rearranged atoms, creating new compounds. Each storm was both destruction and possibility. Even in its violence, the sky was writing the first lines of a recipe. Below, on the ocean floor, hydrothermal vents belched mineral-rich water into the seas. These vents, black smokers and white chimneys, spewed iron, sulfur, and heat. Around them, chemical gradients formed differences of temperature and energy that nature loves to exploit. Today, in the deep oceans, such vents teem with life, tubeworms, clams, and bacteria feeding not on sunlight, but on chemistry. In the Hadean, there were no such creatures yet, but the vents still pulsed with promise. In their pores and cracks, molecules assembled, bonds formed, patterns emerged. Life had not yet appeared, but the canvas was ready. Paint mixed the first strokes, waiting. It is here in the chemistry of vents and the energy of lightning that many scientists believe life's first steps were taken. Not in a single spark, not in a moment of magic, but in a slow gathering, a patient dance of molecules, trying combinations, failing, trying again. Perhaps strands of RNA formed fragile yet persistent. perhaps membranes of lipids gathered into bubbles, enclosing small worlds within. In the quiet dark of the oceans, these experiments multiplied, some collapsing, some enduring, until at last one persisted long enough to call itself alive. I do not see this moment as an accident, but as a necessity. When the conditions are right, water energy, chemistry, complexity seeks to grow. Order rises out of disorder, not by chance alone, but by the deep logic of nature. The Hadean world was violent, yes, but it was also fertile. It was a womb of stone and water out of which life could not help but emerge. And so in those ancient seas the first true story of Earth began. Invisible to the eye, too small to notice, life's first cells stirred. They were fragile, vulnerable, subject to every wave and every spark. Yet they endured, dividing, changing, experimenting further. The Earth was no longer only stone and storm. It had given birth to something that could remember itself, replicate itself, carry information forward in time. The planet had gained memory. I imagine myself leaning close to one of those early cells, watching it divide, watching its molecules pass on their patterns. In that moment, though, it could never know it became ancestor to everything. To forests, to oceans filled with fish, to mammals, to us. All of it was hidden there, encoded in a fragile bubble, drifting in a scalding sea. Yet life was still a whisper against the roar of Earth. Volcanoes continued their fire. Asteroids still fell, and the crust shook with tectonic restlessness. There were times when life must have been nearly erased, when impacts boiled the seas, when magma swept across the land, when gases choked the skies. But always some fragment endured. Always memory found a way to continue. That resilience became life's signature. To me, this persistence holds a deep lesson. We often imagine survival as triumph, as conquest. But in the beginning, survival was simply endurance. The ability to hold on, to find a niche, to persist quietly through disaster. Life's first gift was not power, but patience. Not conquest, but continuity. The rain outside my window tonight feels different as I think of this. Each drop a reminder of the first rains, each rumble of thunder an echo of the ancient storms. We live in the calm inheritance of that violent age, but the memory of it remains all around us, in the iron of our blood, forged in ancient stars, in the salt of our tears, echoing the first seas, in the very molecules of our bodies descended from those fragile bubbles of life. The Hadean is long gone. Its fire cooled, its storms gentled. But without its violence, without its endless alchemy of stone water and sky, we would not be here. To know this is to know that we are not separate from the planet, but children of its earliest chaos. As the seas deepened and spread, they became the mirrors of the sky, reflecting storms and lightning, carrying within them the memory of every drop of rain. In those waters, invisible dramas unfolded slow and patient, building the foundations of what would one day be called biology. To imagine those oceans is to think of them not as barren, but as restless libraries, pages turning letters forming words, assembling even before a language was fully written. Each tide drawn by the moon folded and unfolded these chemical alphabets. Salts washed from young rocks, mixed with carbon from the sky, with hydrogen from water, with sulfur and iron from the vents below. With every cycle, complexity increased, as though the planet itself were compelled to climb toward order. And in truth, this is the great secret of nature. Entropy may rule the universe at large, but within small corners, where energy flows, order blossoms. I imagine standing at the rim of a volcanic island in that time. The horizon is dim with clouds, the air heavy with the smell of sulfur. Waves crash against black stone steaming where they meet fresh lava. In a tide pool, shallow and warm droplets gather and evaporate, leaving behind films of organic molecules. Some of these films fold into shapes that can copy themselves imperfectly, but persistently. Each mistake is a new chance. Each chance is a step toward life. I lean closer, though the forms are invisible to my eyes. In this pool under this storm, chemistry rehearses the future. Lipids form membranes enclosing reactions inside. Nucleotides align, link, and break until some chains become stable enough to endure. They do not yet know what they are, but they are the beginning of memory structures that can carry information through time. It is fragile, but it is a threshold. The earth has crossed from stone to story. The air above remains hostile. Ultraviolet light from the young sun beats down, and without an ozone layer, its rays are deadly. Yet even this destruction serves a role. Energy, fierce and unrelenting, breaks bonds and forces new ones. Every spark of lightning, every photon of ultraviolet, every chemical reaction in a vent is another experiment. Millions fail. One endures. And from endurance comes lineage. In those early days, lineage was not yet the lineage of species, but of molecules. The persistence of a chain of RNA. The ability of a bubble of lipids to capture and protect. The chance linking of two systems so that one stabilizes the other. These were the ancestors of ancestors, the great-grandparents of every living cell. How many times did life almost begin, only to collapse? How many fragile systems formed, survived for hours, for days, only to dissolve in heat or radiation? And yet, one endured. One crossed the invisible line between chemistry and biology. That crossing is the great miracle of the Hadean, though I do not believe it was magic. It was inevitability. I sit now in silence listening to the storm outside my own window, and I feel a connection across time. The rain on my roof is gentle, but it carries the echo of those ancient rains. The molecules in the water may have traveled through countless cycles, oceans, rivers, glaciers, clouds, yet some of them may have fallen before billions of years ago onto basalt, still hot with fire. To drink water today is to drink history, to swallow the memory of creation itself. The crust of the earth, once thin and fragile, began to stabilize. Continents, or at least their seeds, rose as lighter rocks floated above the denser mantle. These proto-continents drifted and broke, colliding and separating in cycles that would never cease. Already, plate tectonics was rehearsing its endless rhythm, the recycling of crust, the building of mountains, the carving of basins. The earth was never still, and it never will be. From this motion came diversity. Oceans, shallow and deep coastlines, jagged and shifting volcanoes, towering and collapsing. Each environment offered a new set of conditions, a new laboratory for chemistry to attempt something novel. The surface of the planet was not uniform, and in that variety lay opportunity. Life does not flourish in sameness, it flourishes in difference. I imagine walking along the edge of a hydrothermal vent field in the deep sea of that time. The water is dark except for the glow of minerals and the heat shimmering from chimneys. The pressure is immense, crushing, yet within the pores of the vent's walls, tiny chambers form microscopic shelters. Inside them, gradients of temperature and chemistry create micro-worlds where molecules are stabilized, where reactions can occur again and again, sheltered from the chaos outside. Perhaps it was here that the first true cells assembled, mineral walls serving as scaffolds concentrating molecules until they found stability. In these narrow crevices, chaos was channeled into order, and when at last a protocell formed that could divide, replicate, and sustain itself, life had taken hold. I cannot know the exact place nor the exact time. No one can. But I know it happened because I am here, because you are here, because everything alive today carries the fingerprints of that origin. The structure of DNA, the universality of the genetic code, the shared chemistry of every cell. These are echoes of the first success, the first system that endured. It humbles me to think that the roots of my own existence reach so far back, not only to the first mammals or the first vertebrates, not only to the first multicellular creatures, but to that very moment when Earth's chemistry learned to remember. To breathe today is to participate in a story billions of years long. The Hadean Eon eventually gave way to calmer times, but even in its closing chapters, the Earth was still restless. Impacts continued, though less frequent. Volcanoes erupted, though the crust had grown thicker. Oceans spread wider, covering much of the planet. Above them, clouds gathered, storms raged, and the balance of gases shifted slowly, preparing for what would come. When I lift my eyes to the stars at night, I wonder how many other worlds are still in their own Hadean ages, molten, stormy, chaotic. How many are gathering oceans? How many are stirring chemistry? How many will cross the threshold to life? Perhaps countless. Perhaps only a few. But I know this: if it happened here once, it can happen again. The rain outside eases now. The wind softens, and I feel as though the earth itself has been whispering through the storm. It tells me that beginnings are never gentle, that creation is forged in fire and tested in endurance. It tells me that we are children of chaos, but also children of persistence. And it tells me that within every drop of rain, every grain of soil, every breath of air, lies the memory of those first days when a barren world dreamed of life. The rains of the Hadean softened into the seas of the Archean, and though the earth remained restless, something had changed forever. The spark of life had taken hold, fragile but persistent, and it began to weave itself into the planet's story. I imagine myself standing on a shoreline now, not the molten coasts of earlier times, but a land shaped by lava flows, hardened into basaltic plains, with shallow pools warmed by the sun. The air remains harsh, thick with carbon dioxide and methane, yet it carries the faintest whisper of transformation. For the first time, the world is no longer silent stone and storm alone. It breathes, though its breath is microscopic. If I could scoop up a handful of water from these shallow pools and peer inside, I would see the architects of everything to come. Primitive cells, tiny and simple, drifting and dividing. They are not like the complex creatures I know, not yet, even like the bacteria that line my skin or fill my gut today. They are older forms, ancestors so distant they seem alien. And yet within them lies the blueprint for all future life. Each carries a memory written in molecules passed down through countless divisions. Each division a link in an unbroken chain that stretches to me. These first cells were chemists. They did not breathe oxygen, for oxygen was poison in their world. Instead, they fed on the chemistry of the earth itself, on hydrogen from vents, on carbon from the sky, on minerals dissolved in the seas. Some harvested energy from the very rocks, stripping electrons and sending them along chains that released power. Others captured light in primitive ways, not yet photosynthesis as we know it, but the first experiments in turning sunlight into survival. They were small, but their work was immense, for they were not merely living in the earth, they were changing it. To imagine this time is to imagine a planet alive with invisible transformation. In every pool, every vent, every droplet of water, life multiplied. It explored chemical strategies, found new ways to endure, created new pathways. And as it did, it began to alter the atmosphere, the oceans, and the rocks themselves. The earth and life were no longer separate. They were partners, shaping each other in an endless dialogue. I reflect on this partnership, and I see a lesson. Too often, we think of life as something that lives upon the earth, as though the planet were a stage and we its actors. But the truth is deeper. The earth is alive with life. Its air is what life exhales, its soil is what life builds from decay, its oceans are what life circulates. To know this is to see that our planet and life are not two stories, but one story told with two voices. The moon, still closer than it is today, continued to tug at the seas, pulling tides that surged higher and fell lower than in later ages. Each tide was not only a motion of water, but a stirring of life. In tidal pools, organisms were concentrated, then dispersed, then concentrated again. Molecules of DNA and RNA were tested under the stress of drying and wetting, and only the most resilient endured. Over countless cycles, this relentless testing wrote resilience into the very fabric of biology. Volcanoes, too, never ceased their speech. Eruptions poured new minerals into the oceans, creating fresh opportunities for life to adapt. Ash filled the skies, darkening the planet, then settled into the seas, enriching them with nutrients. Even disasters became nourishment, and life learned to survive not despite chaos, but through it. I picture a great meteor strike one of the many that still scarred the Earth in this era. The impact shatters, rock vaporizes oceans, darkens skies for years. Countless organisms perish. Yet somewhere in a vent in a crack of stone in a pool shielded by rock, life endures. And when the skies clear, it blooms again, spreading into every niche, richer for the trial. This rhythm of destruction and renewal became the heartbeat of evolution. As I walk in, thought across this young earth, I sense the world is no longer only a place of fire and stone, but of hidden gardens. They are invisible, yes, but they are there in the microscopic colonies, forming mats on rocks, in the films of cells clinging to vents, in the thin scums floating on the seas. These are the first ecosystems, fragile but real, the first communities of life. Their legacy is profound. These mats trapped sunlight, captured minerals, exhaled gases. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, they began to alter the balance of the atmosphere. In their quiet work, they laid the groundwork for the great oxidation to come, though that was still far in the future. For now, they lived in a world suited to them, a world where oxygen was poison, where methane and carbon dioxide sustained them. But already they were preparing the planet for something greater, though they did not know it. It humbles me again to realize that the air I breathe today, rich with oxygen, is not simply a natural gift, but a biological one. It is the inheritance of billions of years of microscopic labor of cells, exhaling slowly until the sky was transformed. Every breath I take is a whisper of those ancient lives. The continents, still small and scattered, began to gather into larger masses. Their rocks, lighter than the surrounding crust, floated like rafts on the mantle. Rivers carved valleys. Rain fell, seas expanded, and with them, the cycles of erosion and sedimentation began. The earth was building its surface, layering stone upon stone, writing history in strata that would one day be read by creatures like me. And life wrote itself into those rocks. Fossils did not yet exist, but chemical traces, ratios of isotopes, patterns of carbon were already leaving signatures. The earth itself was becoming a book, its pages pressed in stone, its ink the molecules of life. To read that book is to hear voices from 4 billion years ago, voices that speak without words, but with chemistry. Sometimes when I hold a stone in my hand, I think of this. A stone is not just matter, it is memory. It has been melted, crushed, uplifted, and worn. It carries the record of fire, of pressure, of time. And in some stones it carries the record of life's breath, its metabolism, its presence. To touch a rock is to touch the memory of Earth itself. The storm outside my window deepens again, thunder rolling across the sky. I think of the storms of that age, storms, unending storms, that carved the first rivers, that filled the first lakes, that fed the first oceans. Those storms were not obstacles to life, they were its companions. Each bolt of lightning was an experiment. Each drop of rain was a thread in the tapestry. Even destruction was woven into creation. And so, as the Archean age unfolded, the earth was no longer only a place of potential. It was a place of living reality. Life was not merely possible. It was actual. It was multiplying. It was exploring. And though the creatures of that time were invisible, their influence was vast. They were writing the conditions for every future age. They were laying the foundation for forests, for animals, for us. I stand in thought at the edge of one of those ancient seas, and I know that everything I see today, every tree, every bird, every city, began here in cells too small for the eye, in experiments too fragile to last, except that they did. And because they did, I am here, and because they did, I can tell this story. The seas in those days stretched far, but the continents remained small, fragile islands of stone adrift on an oceanic world. To walk along one of their shores would have been to walk in silence, broken only by the hiss of steam and the crack of lava. No birds cried, no insects hummed, no leaves rustled in the wind. The world was alive, but invisible to the senses of a being like me. Its vitality was hidden in its smallest forms, humming quietly within drops of water and mats of unseen cells. And yet, though invisible, these cells were reshaping the earth more profoundly than any mountain or river. They consumed and exhaled, shifting the chemistry of oceans and skies. They multiplied until they formed films that clung to rock communities, that thickened into microbial mats, sometimes building structures we would one day call stromatolites. To look at a stromatolite is to look at a fossil not of an organism, but of a society, a city of microbes, stacked layer upon layer, each one building upon the waste and work of the last. It is the architecture of patience, a monument to persistence. In those shallow seas, light filtered down through murky skies. Some cells began to master a remarkable trick: photosynthesis. Not the oxygen-producing photosynthesis that would later change the world, but an earlier form using hydrogen sulfide instead of water. It produced sulfur, not oxygen, and yet it was still a miracle. Sunlight turned into energy. Energy turned into growth. These cells were the first to bind the power of the sun to translate its light into survival. I picture them as pioneers, tiny and blind, yet carrying within them the key to all that would follow. With every photon they captured, they were rehearsing for the day when others would split water itself, releasing oxygen into the air. That day was still far, but the path was being laid quietly, invisibly, in the shallows of a planet still raw. The Earth, in those times, was not a stable home. Its crust shifted its volcanoes, erupted its seas, boiled in places where magma broke through. Great impacts still arrived from the sky, though less frequent than before. Each one was a catastrophe for life: boiling seas, blackening skies, sterilizing regions of the planet. But life was stubborn. In vents, in cracks, in hidden refuges, it endured. Always it endured. This was the character it carried forward through time, the ability to cling to existence in the face of annihilation. I think of my own life, of moments when everything seemed fragile, when chaos seemed ready to erase me. And I take comfort in this memory of Earth. Survival is not always about strength. It is about persistence, about finding even the smallest refuge, about holding on long enough for conditions to change. The story of life is not the story of conquest, but the story of endurance. The oceans, stirred by tides and storms, carried cells across vast distances. Communities that had once been local spread to new shores. With each new place came new conditions, new experiments, new adaptations. Over millions of years, diversity grew, not the diversity of species we know, but the diversity of strategies. Some cells harvested minerals, some captured light, some fed on the waste of others. Each niche filled each cycle, interwoven until even in this invisible world, ecosystems took shape. The atmosphere above was still heavy with carbon dioxide and methane, giving the planet a greenhouse warmth. The sun was fainter, then only about 70% as bright as it is today, but the thick air-trapped heat keeping the oceans liquid, keeping the world alive. Here is another paradox. What would later be seen as poison carbon dioxide in abundance was then a gift, the blanket that kept the earth from freezing. Life's future was cradled by gases that now we fear. The same molecules that threaten our climate today once nurtured our beginnings. In the darkness of the deep ocean, far from sunlight, life found other paths. Cells clustered around hydrothermal vents, feeding on the chemistry of the earth itself. They did not need the sky nor the sun. They found energy in minerals in heat, in gradients of electrons. These vent communities were worlds unto themselves, islands of life in an endless black. And they remind me that life does not need the conditions I call normal. It only needs energy, water, and persistence. Everything else is negotiable. If I could walk the seafloor, then I would find no fish, no corals, no shells. Only black chimneys rising from the ground, plumes of mineral-rich water billowing upward, and in their shadows films of microbes clinging to stone. The silence would be profound, broken only by the hiss of venting gas. Yet here in this alien dark lay the promise of future abundance. The first economies of life were already operating small exchanges of energy and matter that would one day scale into forests and savannas and oceans filled with whales. Above the continents grew slowly colliding and merging, breaking apart again. Their rocks weathered in the rain, carrying minerals into the seas. This constant recycling enriched the oceans, feeding the microbes that multiplied within them. Every mountain built by tectonics was eventually worn down by rain, and every grain of sand carried to the sea became part of the cycle. Even then, the partnership of Earth and life was inseparable. The planet provided minerals, life transformed them, and together they shaped the surface. Sometimes I think of Earth not as a stage, but as a single organism. Its rocks are bones, its oceans blood, its air breath, and its life, the cells that animate it. We are not separate from this body, but part of it, cells in its great organism, voices in its story. To live is to participate in Earth's metabolism, to join the dialogue that began billions of years ago in the Hadean seas. The Archean age stretched on, and with it, the patience of evolution. Billions of years passed with life remaining microscopic, with no forests, no animals, no sound but the roar of storms and waves. To our eyes, it seems uneventful. But in truth, it was the longest age of preparation, the deep foundation upon which everything else was built. Without it, the Cambrian explosion, the rise of mammals, the existence of humans would have been impossible. It is humbling to realize that most of Earth's history belongs not to creatures like me, but to microbes, to the quiet architects who built the conditions of possibility. The rain outside my window eases again, and I hear the drip of water from the eaves. I think of those endless rains of the early Earth, and I realize they never truly ended. They changed. Softened became part of the hydrological cycle, but they are the same water. The drops that fall tonight may once have fallen on basalt 4 billion years ago, may once have filled a tide pool where the first cells divided. To live is to be immersed in continuity. To drink is to taste time itself. And so, as part 3 of this story closes, I find myself grateful not only for the forests and animals and people who share my present, but for the unseen ancestors who made them possible. The microbes of the Archean silent invisible patient shaped the earth in ways that echo still. Without them, there would be no air to breathe, no continents to walk, no oceans to sail, no voices to tell this story. They were the first storytellers, though they spoke in molecules, not in words. And I, in this moment, am simply another voice added to theirs, another link in a chain that stretches back to that first bubble of life in a scalding sea. To tell this story is to remember them, to honor the quiet labor that made everything possible. The earth had grown quieter compared to its fiery youth, but silence is not the same as stillness. Beneath its crust, the mantle shifted restlessly, and above the sky carried storms as vast as continents. Yet life, invisible and patient, persisted through it all, and with every cycle of rain, tide, and eruption, it changed both itself and its planet. By the time I step into thought and look upon this earth, it is no longer merely a molten sphere recovering from chaos. It is a world with oceans that shimmer beneath the sun, with proto-continents adrift, like rafts with a sky that bears the mark of breath, though not yet the breath I know. In this imagined walk, I find myself upon the shore of one of those early continents. The rocks beneath my feet are ancient granite flecked with minerals that sparkle in the light. These are not the dark basalts of the Hadean, but something new, lighter, more buoyant, born of processes that refined and recycled the crust. To stand on granite is to stand on a continent's seed, a fragment of land that resisted the sea's swallowing and became the stage for future life. The wind is heavy with gases, with methane and carbon dioxide, and though I could not breathe it, I feel the weight of it pressing, enveloping, holding the planet's warmth. Around me, the seas stretch vast and endless. Their surfaces are restless tides pulled high and low by the moon's closer embrace. In the shallows, something remarkable is taking place. Microbial mats, layer upon layer of cells, grow across the rocks. They trap sediments, exhale gases, and build stromatolites and mounds that rise slowly from the seafloor like monuments. They are small, unnoticed, but they are builders, architects of both stone and air. When I place my hand upon such a structure in imagination, I feel the weight of patience. Each layer, a day, a year, a century of cells dividing, living, dying, leaving behind stone that endures for billions of years. I lean closer to the mats and watch the cells at work. They harvest sunlight, capturing its energy through primitive photosynthesis. At first, they produce not oxygen, but sulfur, an invisible exchange of atoms that nonetheless sustains them. Over time, others evolve the ability to split water molecules, and with this act, the course of Earth is forever altered. Oxygen, at first a toxin to most forms of life, seeps slowly into the seas and skies. It does not transform the planet overnight. It takes millions of years, building drop by drop, breath by breath. But eventually, this invisible gas becomes the sky itself, the atmosphere that will one day cradle forests and animals. It is difficult for me to grasp the timescales involved. I measure my life in decades, my species in thousands of years, my civilization in centuries. Yet here, change unfolds over millions upon millions of years. Oceans shift, continents drift, atmospheres evolve, all so slowly that no single life could ever notice. And yet, when I step back in thought and see the sweep of it all, I witness a transformation as profound as any miracle. The earth is no longer a world of fire and stone. It is becoming a breathing world, a living world, one that carries life not only in its seas, but in its very air. Above me, the sun shines weaker than it does today, but the greenhouse gases hold the warmth close, preventing the seas from freezing. The paradox of the faint young sun is solved by the thick blanket of carbon and methane, and I realize that even the harshest conditions can be blessings in disguise. Without those gases, the oceans would have turned to ice, and life's fragile experiments might have ended. What I call poison today was then a womb. What I call danger was then protection. The meaning of a thing depends on the context of its time. I walk inland and find rivers carving valleys, carrying minerals into the oceans. The rocks are eroded grain by grain, their fragments carried to the seas, feeding life with nutrients. Each mountain that rises will one day fall, and in its fall it will feed. I understand now that erosion is not loss, but transformation, that even the wearing down of stone serves the cycle of renewal. Nothing in this earth is wasted. Every process, no matter how violent or slow, feeds another. In the deep ocean, hydrothermal vents continue their endless work. Around them, colonies of microbes thrive, feeding not on sunlight, but on the chemistry of the earth. These communities remind me that life has many strategies, many ways to endure. It does not depend on a single path, but explores all that is possible. In this exploration lies resilience. Even if the skies darken, even if the sun falters, life has its refuges. It finds a way. And it is here in the quiet persistence of these microbes that I find another reflection. Human beings, for all our brilliance, often imagine that life is fragile, precarious, one disaster away from ending. But the truth written in stone and in cell is that life is far more resilient than we can imagine. It has endured bombardment, volcanism, ice ages, and extinctions. It will endure beyond us into futures I cannot dream. The fragility is not life itself, but our particular form of it. Life is the enduring river. We are only one wave. I return in thought to the shoreline where the tide pulls and releases. The moon hangs large in the sky, closer than I have ever seen it, its pull shaping the very rhythm of the seas. Each tide is a stirring, a mixing, a chance for life to recombine and adapt. Without the moon, these tides would be weaker, and perhaps life's experiments would have been slower, its progress delayed. To gaze at the moon today is to see not only a companion in the night, but a midwife of life itself. Its presence is written in the rhythm of the oceans, in the very heartbeat of the planet. The world of this time is alien to me, yet it feels familiar. The stones are strange, the air unbreathable, the seas too hot, the skies too heavy. And yet, within these differences, I see the seeds of everything I know. The same molecules that course through my blood were once coursing through those first cells. The same cycles of water, of erosion, of renewal were already in motion. The same patience that built stromatolites still builds mountains, still builds forests, still builds the slow, unhurried beauty of the earth. The storm outside my window tonight has returned rain, striking the glass wind, shaking the trees. As I listen, I feel the echo of those early rains, of those first storms that shaped rivers and seas. The earth whispers through the storm that nothing is wasted, that even chaos serves creation, that patience is the true architect of all things. The shoreline fades behind me as I wander deeper into this ancient world, in thought, following rivers that cut across raw continents, their waters clouded with sediments torn from mountains still young. The rivers rush toward the oceans, carrying with them nutrients that fuel invisible kingdoms. I kneel beside one such river in imagination, touch its waters, and though they would scald me with heat and sting with acidity, I feel their significance. These rivers are lifelines stitching together land and sea, delivering the minerals that sustain life's earliest experiments. The air above still hangs heavy with methane, giving the sky a strange tint, perhaps a hazy orange. Sunlight filters through like a distant fire, not the clear brilliance I know today, but a muted glow. Yet within that dimness, photosynthetic microbes capture light, transforming it into survival. They are countless carpeting shallow seas, spreading across tidal flats. Each one insignificant alone, but together they are an army remaking the planet molecule by molecule. I watch them in my mind's eye, these microbial architects. They divide without thought, without purpose, yet their collective work will alter the destiny of Earth. Slowly, oxygen begins to seep from their photosynthesis. At first, it reacts with iron in the oceans, rusting it out, staining sediments with red. For millions of years, oxygen vanishes as soon as it appears swallowed by stone and sea. But eventually, the sinks are filled and oxygen begins to gather in the air. The atmosphere shifts. The poison of one age becomes the gift of another. There is something profoundly humbling in this. These microbes, without awareness, without intention, prepared the way for all future life, including me. They did not know what they were building, yet they built it nonetheless. Perhaps this is the nature of creation, that we shape futures. We cannot see that our actions ripple outward in ways we will never understand. I imagine standing at the edge of a shallow lagoon where stromatolites rise from the sea floor. They are not tall, only mounds a few feet high, but they are cities in miniature. Each layer built by countless generations. Each surface alive with cells feeding on sunlight, dividing, dying, leaving behind stone. To place my hand on one is to touch billions of years of patience, to feel the slow rhythm of life that measures time not in days but in eons. Now, around me, the landscape remains harsh. Volcanoes erupt on the horizon, pouring fire into the sea. Ash drifts into the sky, darkening the world, cooling it, then settling back into the waters, enriching them with minerals. The cycle repeats endlessly, destruction feeding creation. It reminds me that the earth is not hostile to life nor benevolent. It simply is, and in its being, it offers both challenge and opportunity. Life's role is to endure, to adapt, to turn the rawness of the world into nourishment. The continents grow slowly larger, colliding and breaking apart in the restless dance of plate tectonics. When they collide, mountains rise. When they break, new seas form. These motions are invisible in the span of a single lifetime, yet relentless over millions of years. I stand in thought on a mountain ridge that will one day erode to nothing, and I realize that permanence is an illusion. Everything rises and falls. Everything changes shape. But in that impermanence lies the flow of life, the renewal of cycles. In the deep oceans far from sunlight, life thrives in silence. I descend in imagination to a hydrothermal vent field where black chimneys pour minerals into the sea. The water is scalding here, toxic to me, but perfect for microbes that feed on its chemistry. I see films of life clinging to stone communities built around gradients of energy. No light reaches this place, yet it is vibrant. It teaches me that life does not depend on the familiar, that it can adapt to conditions I would find unbearable. The lesson is simple. Life is not fragile, but flexible. As I drift through this ancient world in thought, I sense that the earth itself is alive with transformation. The crust thickens, the air changes, the seas deepen, life expands. Each process interlocks with the others. Each cycle feeds into the whole. It is not a static system, but a dialogue. Earth and life speaking to one another through chemistry, through erosion, through breath. I realize that to understand life, I must also understand the planet, for they are one story told with two voices. The rain outside my window in the present grows heavier, drumming against the glass. It carries me back to the endless rains of the Archean, when the atmosphere was still heavy with vapor, when clouds circled the planet in storms that lasted centuries. Those rains were not obstacles, but sculptors. They carved valleys, filled lakes, nourished oceans. Each drop contributed to the great alchemy. When I listen now, I hear not only weather but history, not only water but memory. I pause in thought and consider the timescales again. Billions of years of invisible labor, patient and unceasing, created the conditions for my breath in this moment. The oxygen in my lungs is the legacy of microbes that lived and died before animals were even imagined. The soil beneath my feet is ground from mountains built and worn away countless times. The water in my veins is older than the continents themselves. To live is to carry within me the memory of ages, to be a vessel of the Earth's persistence. As the Archean age draws onward, the planet grows more stable, more habitable, though still harsh by my standards. The stage is being set for something greater, for the great oxidation event that will transform the atmosphere and the course of life forever. But even now, before that great threshold, I see the seeds of it in every stromatolite, in every breath of a microbe, in every molecule of oxygen that escapes into the sky. The storm outside begins to fade, leaving only the sound of water dripping from the eaves, steady and quiet. In that sound, I hear the persistence of life, the patience of Earth. And I realize that though billions of years separate me from those ancient rains, they are the same rains, the same water, the same cycle. Nothing is lost, only transformed. The Earth is entering a threshold. I can feel it in the imagined air, see it in the seas, sense it in the quiet labor of the microbes that carpet the planet's shallows. For billions of years, life has worked invisibly, whispering into stone and water, changing chemistry molecule by molecule. Now its whispers are beginning to become a shout. Oxygen, once absorbed instantly by rocks and seas, is slowly beginning to linger, to gather, to claim its place in the sky. This is the dawn of the great oxidation, though its light will not be gentle. It will arrive like a slow storm, invisible but profound, transforming the Earth into something utterly new. When I let my thoughts wander back into this world, I stand on the edge of a shallow lagoon. Stromatolites rise beneath the water, their domes glistening in the sun, their layers built from countless generations of microbes. Each cell is small, almost nothing yet together. They build monuments that endure for billions of years. They harvest sunlight, splitting water, exhaling oxygen. That oxygen bubbles upward, invisible, ephemeral, vanishing into chemical reactions that bind it to iron, to sulfur, to stone. But the stones are filling, the sinks are closing. Soon the oxygen will escape into the air, and the planet will be forever changed. It is strange to think that a gas I rely on to live was once a toxin. In this time, oxygen is deadly to most life. Cells that thrived in its absence now shrink from it, retreating into anoxic niches, vents, sediments, deep waters, where oxygen cannot reach. Entire kingdoms of life are pushed aside, forced to adapt or perish. I realize that every gain in evolution is also a loss, that every new world brings with it the extinction of another. The story of Earth is not one of steady ascent, but of trade, of balance, of sacrifice. I look up at the imagined sky. It is still heavy with methane, still tinted with the haze of greenhouse gases. But as oxygen increases, the methane will dwindle, burned away in reactions that thin the greenhouse blanket. The planet may cool, ice may spread, and life will face trials it has never known. Yet, in that trial lies possibility. Oxygen will bring with it new metabolisms, new strategies, new powers. Cells will learn to breathe, to harness oxygen's fierce energy, and from that power, new forms of life will rise. To walk this shoreline is to walk at the edge of transformation. The air is not yet breathable, but I can feel the future in it. The seas are not yet filled with fish, but the groundwork is being laid. The land is not yet green, but its soil is gathering the elements that will one day feed forests. Everything is in preparation, every process a step toward futures hidden beyond the horizon. I bend down and run my hand across a stromatolite in thought. The surface is slick with microbial life, its texture rough with grains of sediment trapped by cells. This is the architecture of patience, the slow labor of organisms that never knew they were reshaping a planet. They lived only to survive the next day, the next division. And yet, through their persistence, they transformed the atmosphere, the oceans, the rocks. They were, without knowing it, planetary engineers. I pause and wonder what lesson this holds for me. Perhaps that the smallest actions repeated patiently can reshape worlds. Perhaps that transformation does not always come from the powerful, but from the persistent. The microbes did not intend to change the sky, but they did. In my own life, perhaps the things I do quietly, the habits I repeat, the words I speak, ripple outward in ways I cannot see. Perhaps change is not always dramatic, but accumulative, written in the patience of time. As the oxygen builds, the seas respond. Iron dissolved in the oceans, rusts falling as layers of red sediment. I walk in imagination across a sea floor littered with iron formations, the birth of what will one day become banded iron rocks. These formations, striped with red and gray, are the fingerprints of oxygen's rise, the record of a world in transition. To hold such a rock today is to hold a page of Earth's diary, a memory pressed into stone. The microbes continue their work, oblivious to the drama. They are not aware that they are altering the future, that they are setting the stage for animals, for forests, for people. They simply live, divide, endure. And yet, in their endurance, they carry forward the greatest transformation in Earth's history. It makes me wonder if awareness is necessary for impact, or if impact is simply the inevitable result of existence. Perhaps every being in living leaves ripples whether they know it or not. The continents drift, colliding and separating, mountains rising and falling. Rivers continue their work, carving valleys, carrying minerals, feeding the seas. Volcanoes erupt, pouring gases into the air, balancing and counterbalancing the microbes' labor. It is a dynamic equilibrium, a dialogue between fire and life, between stone and cell. The earth is not being shaped by one force, but by many, interwoven, inseparable. I look again at the sky, at the slow gathering of oxygen. In imagination, I take a deep breath, though I cannot yet survive it. It burns sharp and alien, but it carries with it the future. Oxygen is energy-condensed sunlight stored in air. It is the fuel that will one day drive muscles, that will one day fire neurons, that will one day make thought possible. Without it, there would be no me, no story, no voice to speak these words. The microbes exhaling in silence are giving me my breath, though billions of years separate us. The rain outside my window tonight is steady, soft against the glass. It reminds me again of continuity. The drops that fall are ancient, recycled countless times. They once fell on stromatolites, on basalt, on seas rich with iron. They once filled the first rivers, carved the first valleys, quenched the first cells. The water in my glass tonight is the same water that nourished the beginning. Nothing is new, only renewed. As I listen, I realize that the great oxidation is not merely a scientific event, but a philosophical one. It is the moment when the waste of one form of life became the foundation for another, when poison became gift, when death for one was life for another. It is the paradox of existence that one being's survival may be another's doom, yet out of that tension, new forms arise. The earth thrives not in harmony alone, but in struggle, in contradiction, in the endless weaving of opposites. I imagine myself standing at the threshold of this age, feeling the wind, smelling the acrid tang of methane, hearing the waves crash against ancient granite. I know that soon the sky will change. The seas will redden, the climate will shift. I know that life will struggle, that many forms will vanish, that others will rise. And I know that this cycle will repeat again and again, through extinctions and renewals, through ages of fire and ice. The lesson is not despair, but resilience. The earth is a teacher of endurance, and life is its most faithful student. The oceans stretch wide before me in imagination, their surfaces restless under the pull of the moon, their depths rich with minerals and life invisible to my eye. But they are not the same oceans they were in earlier ages. They are changing, stained with rust, as oxygen exhaled by microbes reacts with dissolved iron. I picture myself diving beneath the waves, sinking into water tinged with red, watching as layers of iron oxides settle silently onto the sea floor. These sediments will harden into stone, into banded iron formations, into records that geologists will one day split open to read the story of this age. To think that a rock I could hold in my hand today carries the memory of this transformation humbles me. It is as though the earth itself writes in a language of stone, pressing into layers the events of its long history. I realize that everything solid around me, mountains, cliffs, pebbles, are not just matter, but memory. The earth is not silent. It speaks though its voice is slow, its words written in a script that only patience can decipher. The microbes continue their labor, endlessly dividing, endlessly exhaling oxygen. They do not know that they are altering the planet. They do not know that they are paving the way for creatures like me. They live only for themselves, yet in doing so they shape the world. I find myself reflecting on this, on how actions taken without awareness can ripple outward in profound ways. The simplest existence can have the grandest consequences. As oxygen increases, the atmosphere shifts. Methane, once abundant, reacts with oxygen and dwindles. Without methane's greenhouse effect, the earth begins to cool. I see glaciers spreading ice forming at the poles, creeping further than ever before. Perhaps even reaching the equator, plunging the planet into a snowball Earth. Life is tested again, forced into refuges beneath the ice, in the warmth of vents, in the protection of sediments. For many, it is the end, but not for all. Always some endure. I imagine myself walking across a frozen earth, the seas covered with ice, the land buried beneath glaciers. The silence is immense, broken only by the cracking of ice and the moan of shifting glaciers. The air is thin, the world cold, yet beneath the ice in hidden places life continues. It survives not because the world is gentle, but because it is stubborn. Life does not yield easily. It finds a way even when the planet itself seems hostile. And when the ice recedes, as it always does, life blooms again. The oxygen-rich atmosphere remains. The oceans still carry nutrients. The microbes still persist. The cycle of destruction and renewal continues, carving resilience deeper into the fabric of biology. I see now that extinction is not an ending, but a clearing, a space for new forms to arise. The earth creates by destroying, renews, by erasing, builds by tearing down. It is a hard lesson, but a true one. I pause in thought and listen to the rain outside my window in the present. Its rhythm is soft, but it carries the echo of glaciers, melting of oceans, filling of rivers, carving valleys anew. Water has always been the sculptor of earth, whether falling as rain, flowing as rivers, or grinding as ice. To hear it tonight is to hear the persistence of that ancient work. As the great oxidation continues, the sky becomes something closer to what I know. Blue begins to emerge as oxygen builds and methane clears. Clouds form in new ways, storms carry different rains. The chemistry of the air shifts toward the future. The world I know begins to take shape, not yet with forests or animals, but with an atmosphere that can one day support them. The microbes have not only survived, they have created a world in which larger, more complex life will be possible. In this transformation, I see a kind of unintentional generosity. The microbes lived for themselves, yet their waste, their byproduct, became the foundation for all who followed. Perhaps there is a lesson here too, that what we discard may become another's treasure, that what we see as waste may be the seed of another's survival. The world thrives on cycles, on exchange, on the flow of matter from one form to another. Nothing is lost, only transformed. The continents drift further, colliding into larger masses. Mountains rise higher, rivers grow longer, seas widen and deepen. The earth is building a stage vast enough for the dramas of the future. In its stones and seas, in its skies and soils, it is preparing for the arrival of creatures that can walk, breathe, and think. And though that future is still billions of years away, I can feel its approach. I sit in silence and let the weight of this sink in. My own breath, My own life depends on this ancient transformation. The oxygen in my lungs, the iron in my blood, the minerals in my bones, all were shaped in these ancient times, forged in the chemistry of seas I can only imagine. To live is to carry within me the memory of Earth itself. The storm outside has passed now, leaving only a quiet dripping from the trees. The world feels still, though I know it never is. The Earth turns, the continents drift, the cycles continue. And as I reflect on the great oxidation, I realize that the true lesson of this age is patience. Change takes time, millions of years, billions even. Yet change is inevitable. The Earth teaches me that patience is not passive, but powerful. That persistence is the most transformative force of all. And so, as I close my eyes and imagine again the red seas, the rising oxygen, the frozen Earth, I feel a connection across time. The microbes that lived and died then are my ancestors. The rocks they rusted are my history. The air they shaped is my breath. Their story is my story, though they never knew it. And to tell their story now is to honor their work, to remember that life's greatest transformations come not from sudden miracles, but from the steady rhythm of persistence. The Earth feels older now. The chaos of its fiery birth is long past, and the quiet patience of microbial life has reshaped its seas and skies. The air is no longer the suffocating haze of methane it once was. Oxygen, invisible and reactive, has begun to carve its presence into the world. It is still low compared to what I breathe today, but it is enough to mark a turning point. A threshold has been crossed. The planet is learning to breathe. I stand in thought on a stretch of ancient coastline. The waves roll in foaming against black rocks, leaving behind pools in which stromatolites rise like small rounded monuments. I crouch down, running my hand across the surface of one. It is rough with sediment, slick with life. Each layer is the legacy of generations upon generations of microbes, dividing and building without pause. I realize I am touching the slow work of billions of years, a work that will one day give birth to forests and animals, though none of that is visible yet. The sky above is brighter now. With methane-thinning sunlight filters more clearly, the haze dissipating. And for the first time, the heavens may have taken on the blue I know today. Clouds drift across it, carrying rain that falls on mountains and rivers, carving landscapes feeding oceans. I tilt my head back and imagine breathing deeply, though the oxygen would still be too thin for me. And yet, it is enough to change the chemistry of the seas, to alter the minerals that precipitate, to create rusted bands of iron that settle on the sea floor. The planet is inscribing its transformation into stone. The oceans themselves are alive with change. Where once they were tinted with iron, they are now beginning to clear as oxygen reacts with and removes that iron from solution. I swim in imagination through waters where microbes float by the trillions, harvesting sunlight, dividing endlessly. They form mats that cover the seafloor, clumps that drift in the currents, layers that line tidal pools. The oceans are no longer merely chemical cauldrons. They are ecosystems teeming with invisible life. It amazes me that such small beings could alter a planet. They have no awareness of what they do, no plan, no goal. Yet by simply living, they have reshaped the sky, the seas, and the stones. I reflect on this and see a mirror of my own world. We too, as a species, alter the earth simply by living, burning fuel, cutting forests, building cities. Like the microbes, we may not always understand the full consequences of our actions, and yet those consequences ripple outward regardless. Creation and destruction alike are written into the fabric of existence. As oxygen gathers, new possibilities emerge. Some microbes learn to use it to harness its fierce energy. For them, oxygen is not poison, but power. They evolve pathways to breathe, to extract far more energy from their food than ever before. This innovation is profound. It is the beginning of a revolution in metabolism, one that will eventually make complex life possible. Without oxygen, muscles could never burn as they do, brains could never fire as they do. My every breath is a continuation of that ancient innovation carried forward through unbroken lineages of cells. But as some thrive, others struggle. Many forms of life cannot endure oxygen. They retreat into anoxic niches, deep sediments, vents, caves, places untouched by the new atmosphere. They persist there quietly, and even today, in the modern Earth, they survive still hidden from sight, relics of an ancient world. It strikes me that no age truly vanishes. Its life lingers, its memory persists in some corner. To look deeply into Earth today is to see echoes of every past it has ever lived. The continents are larger now, their collisions building mountains, their separations opening seas. Plate tectonics continues its restless dance, and with it climates shift, ecosystems change, oceans circulate. I walk across a mountain ridge in thought, one freshly risen from a collision of plates. Its peaks are sharp, its valleys deep, its rivers fast and wild. In time, wind and rain will wear it down, carry its stones to the sea, turn mountains to sand. Nothing is permanent, not even the tallest peaks. The earth teaches me that permanence is an illusion, that all things flow, all things transform. I sit by a river in imagination, watching its waters carry grains of rock toward the ocean. Each grain is a fragment of history, a memory of a mountain's rise, a contribution to the soil of the future. The river sings softly as it flows, its sound ancient and eternal. I dip my hand into it, feeling the current slip between my fingers, and I realize that water is the most faithful historian of all. It has witnessed every age, carried every molecule, linked every era. The water in this river is the same water that once filled the Hadean seas, the same water that falls tonight as rain outside my window. As I listen to the rain in the present, I feel its continuity. It is gentle tonight, but I know it has been thunderous before. It has carved valleys, fed glaciers, worn mountains to dust. It has carried the memory of Earth across time. Each drop is both ancient and new, both a continuation and a beginning. To hold water is to hold time itself. Back in the ancient world, oxygen continues to rise slowly but relentlessly. The seas clear further, the sky brightens, the air sharpens. This change is not sudden. It takes millions of years. Yet its effects are profound. Entire lineages of life vanish unable to adapt. Others bloom exploiting the new opportunities. The earth does not mourn or celebrate. It simply changes. Life follows. The story continues. I think of my own life, of the changes I have faced, the losses and gains, and I see in Earth's story a reflection of my own. That change is not always gentle, not always fair, but always inevitable. To live is to adapt, to endure, to find a way forward, even when the world seems altered beyond recognition. The microbes did not choose their path, yet they found one. Perhaps that is the essence of life itself, the ability to continue. I close my eyes and breathe, imagining I inhale that ancient air. Thin, sharp, laced with oxygen and carbon dioxide. I exhale, and in that moment, I feel the continuity of breath. My lungs are modern, my breath human, but its origin is ancient. The rhythm of inhale and exhale was written first by microbes, by cells learning to harness energy in ways that would echo through all time. My breath is not my own. It belongs to the earth, to its history, to the persistence of life. The night deepens, the storm softens, and I sit in silence, feeling the vastness of time. Billions of years have passed since those first breaths of oxygen entered the sky. Yet they linger still in every gust of wind, in every breeze, in every breath I take. The patience of life has written itself into the atmosphere, into the rocks, into the seas. To know this is to feel both small and infinite, both fragile and enduring. The world I imagine before me is not yet the one I know, but it is drawing closer. The seas no longer carry the same burden of iron, for much of it has rusted and fallen to the sea floor. Their waters, though still teeming with microbes invisible to me, are beginning to clear, their chemistry altered by oxygen. The sky above is shifting as well, losing its thick haze, showing glimpses of blue, more often, though not yet the pure dome I recognize. In every corner of the planet, life is still small, still single-celled, but its influence is immense. It has altered the air, the oceans, and the very rocks. The Earth is no longer just a planet of geology. It is a planet of biology. I walk along the imagined shore, waves lapping against stone, and I crouch down to study a patch of microbial mat exposed by the tide. It looks unremarkable, just a slimy film on the rock, but I know that within it is the history of the world. These mats are the descendants of the first cells, still carrying the legacy of those who survived the harsh ages of fire and ice. They harvest light, split water, and breathe oxygen into the air. Without them, I would not exist. Without their persistence, this world would have been forever alien to me. The tide recedes, and the mat begins to dry. The cells within it face stress, and many will perish. Yet some have adaptations, protective coating strategies to endure desiccation. They will survive until the tide returns, carrying forward their lineage. This rhythm of survival, of testing, of endurance, has been repeated for billions of years. It is written into the very fabric of life. I reflect on my own struggles, my own moments of desiccation, and I see that resilience is not about avoiding hardship, but about enduring it, about waiting patiently until the tide returns. I turn my gaze inland. Rivers wind through valleys carrying sediments, feeding the seas with minerals. Mountains rise in the distance, jagged and sharp, born of collisions between drifting continents. Their peaks are barren, their slopes scarred by landslides and volcanic eruptions. Yet in time, they too will wear down their stones, carried grain by grain into the oceans. This endless cycle of building and eroding is the heartbeat of Earth, the rhythm that sustains its surface. I pick up a stone in thought, holding it in my hand. It is heavy, solid, seemingly eternal. Yet I know it is not. It was once magma, molten and restless. It was lifted as a mountain worn by rain, carried by rivers. It will one day be ground to sand, perhaps pressed into new stone, perhaps melted again. Its permanence is an illusion. Its story is one of transformation. I realize then that permanence is a story we tell ourselves, but the truth is flow, change, renewal. To live wisely is to accept this, to move with the current rather than resist it. The air above carries new possibilities. Some microbes have learned to use oxygen, to breathe it, to harness its potent energy. This is not a small step, but a revolution. Oxygen metabolism provides far more energy than previous strategies. With that energy, cells can grow larger, can support more complex structures, can explore new ways of living. The groundwork is being laid for complexity, though it will take hundreds of millions of years before it fully blooms. Yet I feel its presence already, a quiet promise in the air. I imagine one of these cells dividing its descendants, carrying forward the ability to breathe. Each one is a seed of the future, though it does not know it. Within its chemistry lies the potential for muscles to contract, for neurons to fire, for thoughts to form. Every breath I take today is a continuation of that first act of respiration, carried through unbroken lineages of cells across billions of years. My breath is ancient. My breath is inheritance. Not all life welcomes oxygen. Many find it toxic, destructive. They retreat into refuges, deep sediments, hot springs, underground aquifers. They carve out niches in which they can persist invisible to me, but still present even today. These organisms are relics of an earlier world, reminders that no age fully vanishes. When I look into a hot spring or study the microbes that live in the absence of oxygen, I am glimpsing not only life's diversity, but its history. The past is not gone. It lives beside me, quietly enduring. The continents drift onward slowly, colliding into larger landmasses. Supercontinents begin to form only to break apart again in the restless motion of plate tectonics. These shifts alter currents, climates, and ecosystems. They create new coastlines, new rivers, new opportunities for life to adapt. The Earth's restlessness is not chaos, but creativity. It ensures that no environment remains static, that life is always tested, always pushed to adapt, always given new challenges. I stand in thought on the edge of such a continent, looking out across a shallow sea. The tide is low, revealing flats of microbial mats stretching far into the distance. The air is warm, heavy with humidity, and the horizon shimmers with heat. I close my eyes and listen. There are no birds, no insects, no animals to fill the air with sound, only the wind, the waves, the crackle of volcanic activity. It is a silence unlike anything I know, a silence filled not with absence, but with potential. I open my eyes and see the mats more closely. Bubbles of oxygen rise from them, breaking on the surface of the water with faint pops. Each bubble is small, but together they are reshaping the sky. I smile in thought, realizing that I owe my breath to these tiny, tireless workers. They do not know me, and I will never meet them yet. They have given me life. Gratitude flows through me, not for a gift intentionally given, but for a gift nonetheless real. The rains fall again, heavy and endless, feeding the rivers, carving the land, filling the seas. I tilt my head up and feel them in imagination. Droplets cool on my skin, each one ancient, each one part of the endless cycle. The rain has never stopped. It fell on the Hadean rocks. It filled the Archean seas. It sculpted the Proterozoic valleys, and it falls still tonight on my window. To feel the rain is to feel the continuity of Earth, the persistence of water, the memory of the planet itself. As oxygen gathers, the climate shifts again. Ice spreads, glaciers creep, the world cools. Life faces trial, but it endures, adapting to new conditions, finding refuge, surviving until warmth returns. These cycles of ice and thaw are not failures, but lessons shaping life into resilience, teaching it to endure change. I think of my own winters of times when everything seemed cold and barren, and I remember that spring always follows, that warmth always returns. That persistence is the true strength. The night deepens, and the rain outside softens into a whisper. I sit in silence, feeling the vastness of time stretch out before me and behind me. Billions of years have passed since those first breaths of oxygen, billions of years of persistence and transformation. And in this moment, I am part of that story, my breath mingling with the inheritance of microbes, my body carrying the memory of stone and sea. The earth whispers to me through the rain. It tells me that patience is power, that persistence is creation, that change is inevitable. It tells me that life is not separate from the planet, but its voice, its song, its memory. And it tells me that every breath, every drop of water, every grain of sand carries within it the history of the world. I close my eyes and listen, and I feel both small and infinite, both fleeting and eternal. I am one life among countless, one voice among billions, one moment in billions of years. And yet, in this moment, I am connected to it all. The microbes that breathed oxygen into the sky, the stones that carry memory, the waters that flow endlessly, All of them are within me, and I am within them. This is the truth of Earth. This is the truth of life. The Earth turns again in thought, and I see a world that has grown more complex, more layered, more alive in ways both visible and hidden. The air holds more oxygen now, though still far less than the breath I take today. The seas, once red with iron, are clearing their chemistry transformed. The continents larger than before rise from the oceans, as true landmasses, their peaks worn by rain, their valleys filled with rivers. This is no longer just a planet of molten rock and simple seas. It is becoming a planet with seasons, climates, and landscapes that resemble in distant shadow the world I know. I imagine myself walking across a broad plain of ancient rock. The ground beneath my feet is granite flecked with quartz and feldspar, lifted by the slow collision of continents. Rivers cut through the plain, their waters rich with sediments carried from mountains eroded grain by grain. The air feels thin, sharp with oxygen, but not yet gentle enough for my lungs. I take a breath in thought, and it burns unfamiliar but alive with promise. The world is still quiet. No trees sway, no animals roam, no insects hum. The silence is deep, broken only by wind, by rain, by the distant rumble of volcanoes. Yet this silence is not emptiness. Beneath it, life hums invisibly, woven into every stone, every droplet, every current. Microbes coat rocks, mats cover tidal flats, colonies cluster in shallow seas. They are invisible to my eyes, but they are everywhere, changing the earth molecule by molecule, breath by breath. In the shallows, stromatolites rise higher, more abundant than before. They carpet coastlines, creating reefs of stone built not by corals, but by microbes. I wade into the lagoon, place my hand on one of these mounds, and feel the roughness of sediment, layered by centuries of patient work. Bubbles of oxygen rise from its surface, breaking the water with soft pops. Each bubble is a breath, a whisper of transformation. These mounds are not monuments to power or conquest. They are monuments to persistence, to the quiet work of life that endures without recognition. And yet, change is never gentle. The oxygen that fills the air is poison to many forms of life. They vanish, retreating to niches untouched by the new gas. Entire kingdoms collapse unseen by me, but profound in their loss. I walk through a world in transition, where survivors cling to vents and sediments, and new lineages rise in the open seas. It is a reminder that evolution is not a story of steady ascent, but of trial and error, of extinction and persistence. To live is to adapt, and those who cannot vanish. The continents drift still, their collisions raising mountains, their separations opening seas. Plate tectonics writes its endless story across the crust. I climb in thought to the summit of a young mountain range. The air is thinner here, the wind sharp, the horizon vast. Rivers carve deep valleys below, glaciers creep across ridges, carrying stone with them. From this height, I can see the planet as a canvas, painted by the movements of stone and water. It is not a static picture, but a living one, its brushstrokes drawn in cycles that last millions of years. I pick up a stone from the ridge and study it. Its crystals sparkle in the light, its surface rough from weathering. I imagine its history melted in the mantle, lifted in a collision, broken by frost, carried by glaciers, worn by rivers. It is not just a stone, but a memory of Earth's motion, a fragment of time held in my hand. And I realize again that nothing is still. Everything flows, everything transforms. To live is to be part of that flow, to accept impermanence as the nature of existence. In the oceans, life begins to explore new strategies. Some cells learn to form partnerships, clustering together, dividing labor. They begin to resemble the ancestors of complex life. The first steps toward eukaryote cells with nuclei with organelles, with the architecture that will one day make animals possible, are being taken. It is still early, still fragile, still invisible to me, but it is happening. The blueprint of complexity is being drawn in molecules and membranes. I imagine peering into a droplet of water under a microscope of thought. Within it, I see a cell larger than the rest, more intricate with compartments inside. It is a leap forward, a step into a future of greater possibilities. This cell does not know what it carries, but I do. Within it lies the potential for forests, for animals, for minds. It is the ancestor of everything complex, the spark that will ignite the diversity of the future. The rain outside my window tonight grows stronger, tapping steadily on the glass. I listen, and I hear the echo of ancient rains falling on mountains, newly risen on seas, newly cleared on valleys freshly carved. Water has always been the sculptor, always the historian, always the thread that binds ages together. It has witnessed every transformation, carried every memory. To hear it now is to be reminded that I am part of its story, that the water falling tonight is the same water that once nourished those first complex cells. I close my eyes and breathe, imagining the thin, sharp air of that time filled with promise and peril. Oxygen was not yet abundant, but it was enough to reshape the world, enough to create both catastrophe and opportunity. It reminds me that every gift carries risk, that every transformation demands sacrifice. The story of life is not written in comfort, but in challenge. To endure is to grow, and to grow is to change. I sit in silence, listening to the storm, feeling the weight of time. Billions of years separate me from those early cells, yet I carry them within me. Their chemistry flows in my veins, their resilience echoes in my breath, their persistence lives in my survival. I am not separate from them. I am their continuation, their voice, their memory. The earth continues its long unfolding, and as I drift in thought through this ancient time, I sense the deep patience with which transformation occurs. The oxygen that microbes breathe into the sky is not yet abundant enough to sustain large creatures, but it is building steadily, quietly, altering the balance of the atmosphere, the chemistry of oceans, and the fate of all future life. The world is being reshaped in ways imperceptible to the beings living within it, and yet the impact will echo forever. I walk in imagination along the shoreline of a vast inland sea. The water is calm, tinted with a faint green from floating microbes, its surface rippling in the wind. The air is warm, the sky above hazy, but brighter than it once was. The horizon is flat, endless, without trees or hills to break its line. The silence presses in, a silence filled with the faint hiss of waves and the soft whisper of wind. I kneel at the edge, touch the water, and feel its coolness. Within it, billions of cells drift unseen, each one busy with the work of dividing, breathing, building. I lean closer, imagining the oxygen bubbling from their membranes, rising through the water, breaking on the surface with soft pops. It is a sound too faint for my ears, but in my mind I hear it like a whisper, like the quiet voice of Earth itself exhaling. These bubbles are more than gas. They are history being written, the atmosphere itself being rewritten. They are the quiet architects of the future. I step back and gaze inland where rivers carve through the land, carrying sediments from young mountains. The continents have grown larger, their collisions raising peaks, their erosion feeding the seas with minerals. The land is barren, no plants to soften it, no roots to hold soil, no forests to shade rivers. Yet even in its bareness, it is alive in its own way. Microbes cling to rocks, inhabit the soil, spread across surfaces in thin films invisible to me. Life has not yet conquered the land in visible form, but it has begun to leave its signature. I crouch by a riverbank, run my fingers through its sediment, and feel the grains of rock slip through. Each grain is ancient, broken from mountains, carried downstream, part of a cycle, older than I can fathom. I realize then that even the land itself is alive in its motion, shaped by forces unseen, transformed by water, by wind, by time. Nothing here is still. Even what seems permanent is moving, changing, flowing toward some future form. In the oceans, the first experiments in complexity continue. Some cells begin to live together, not just as colonies, but as true cooperatives, sharing resources, dividing labor. One becomes the protector, another the energy provider, another the builder of structure. It is the beginning of multicellularity, fragile and tentative, but profound. For the first time, life begins to explore the possibilities of unity. I close my eyes and imagine a microscopic scene, a cluster of cells clinging together, surviving storms of oxygen that might kill them if they were alone. Together, they endure. Together, they thrive. I see in them a lesson that survival is not only about strength, but about cooperation, about connection, about unity. What they are doing unknowingly will one day give rise to bodies, organs, creatures, and eventually minds. Their partnership is the seed of every future community, from coral reefs to human cities. The continents drift slowly across the globe, their motion almost imperceptible. I imagine looking down from above, watching them inch together, then apart like pieces of a puzzle rearranged endlessly. Supercontinents form, then fracture. Oceans open and close. With each shift, climates change, currents redirect, environments evolve. The Earth is restless, and in its restlessness it creates. Life adapts to these changes, tested endlessly, refined by trial. I find myself standing in thought on the edge of such a continent, gazing out across a shallow sea that stretches to the horizon. The wind is strong, carrying with it the scent of salt and minerals. Waves crash against the rocks, spraying mist into the air. I close my eyes and feel it on my skin, cool and sharp, ancient and familiar. It is the same ocean that surrounds my world today, though changed in composition, changed in life, changed in face. To feel it is to feel continuity, the persistence of water as the medium of all life. I look down at the stone beneath my feet. It is volcanic, black and rough, formed from lava that cooled quickly when it met the sea. I trace its edges with my hand and think of the fire that once shaped it, the heat that poured from the earth's depths. That fire has not vanished. It still burns beneath me in the mantle, in the core. The earth is alive with motion, alive with fire, alive with cycles. What seems solid and eternal is in truth only a moment in the flow of transformation. As oxygen accumulates, it reacts with minerals, rusting the earth itself. Iron in the seas binds with it, falls to the sea floor, creating bands of red stone that will one day be mined by humans to build their civilizations. The very air of this time becomes the resource of the future. The rocks are not silent. They record, they remember. To hold a banded iron formation in my hand today is to hold the memory of this ancient revolution, to see the fingerprint of life etched into stone. I reflect on this and realize that the earth keeps its own records, though it does not write in words. Its language is stone, water, air, and life. Its archives are mountains, sediments, fossils, isotopes. To read them is to learn the story of the world, written patiently over billions of years. I think of my own fleeting notes, my journals, my words, and I see how temporary they are in comparison. Yet perhaps they too are part of the record, part of the attempt of life to know itself, to remember itself, to leave behind something more than silence. The rains return in my imagination, heavy and endless. They fall on mountains, rivers, oceans, filling the world with sound. I tilt my head back and feel them cool and ancient. Each drop carries memory. Each drop has fallen countless times before. They connect me to the earliest seas, to the glaciers that will come, to the rivers that carve valleys. To feel the rain is to feel time itself falling gently, endlessly, without beginning or end. I sit with this thought and realize how small I am in the vastness of Earth's story, yet also how connected. My breath, my body, my water, my stones, all are continuations of what began billions of years ago. I am not separate from Earth. I am its child, its voice, its memory. And in this realization, there is both humility and peace. The storm outside my window eases into a soft drizzle. I listen, and I hear the echo of all storms past, the ones that fell on barren rock, the ones that carved the first rivers, the ones that nourished the first microbes. Each storm is different, and yet each is the same part of the endless cycle that sustains life. I close my eyes and breathe deeply, feeling the continuity, the persistence, the eternity of water, of air, of Earth itself. And as the night deepens, I sense the next chapter waiting. Complexity is beginning fragile but unstoppable. Life has endured the trial of oxygen, and now it begins to dream of new forms, new possibilities, new futures. The silence of this world will not last forever. Soon the air will carry not just wind and rain, but the voices of creatures, the songs of forests, the whispers of minds. The earth is preparing for them patiently, silently, inevitably. The earth turns again in the slow patience of deep time, and I find myself watching a planet that is no longer only a world of microbes and silence, but one that is preparing to awaken in new ways. The seas, once iron-rich and opaque, are clearing still further. The atmosphere carries more oxygen, though not yet the abundance I depend on. The continents, larger than ever before, have gathered into vast landmasses, their collisions raising mountains, their separations opening seas. This is not the Earth of beginnings, but a planet entering a new chapter. A chapter where complexity stirs quietly in the hidden folds of water and stone. I walk in imagination along the shore of a shallow inland sea. The light is softer now, filtered through clouds that drift slowly across the sky. The air is thinner, sharper with oxygen, though still harsh to my lungs. The horizon is wide and empty, broken only by the line where water meets land. I crouch by the tide pools left behind as the sea retreats, pools where microbial mats cling to stone, where bubbles of oxygen break the surface with faint, steady pops. They are small sounds, almost nothing against the vast silence, but they are the prelude to everything that is coming. I lean close to one pool and imagine peering into its water. Tiny organisms drift there, some simple, some already more complex. Among them are the ancestors of eukaryote cells, with internal compartments with nuclei to hold their genetic code, with mitochondria to burn oxygen for energy. They are larger than their cousins, more intricate, more ambitious in their design. They do not know it, but within them lies the possibility of animals, of plants, of everything that will one day fill this planet with movement and sound. I sit back on the stone and think of this. Complexity does not arrive suddenly. It is a slow experiment, a fragile partnership. Once a larger cell engulfed a smaller one, and instead of digesting it, they formed an alliance. The smaller cell became a mitochondrion, a power generator, and the larger cell carried it forward, division after division. This was not planned, not foreseen. It was an accident, a moment of chance. Yet it changed the fate of life forever. From this partnership came energy enough for complexity, for growth, for thought. I reflect on how much of life depends on such accidents, such fragile beginnings. My own life, too, is filled with moments of chance that shaped everything. The meeting of people, the timing of events, the unexpected turn. We imagine our lives as planned paths, but in truth, they are woven from accidents that become turning points. The story of the Earth is no different. Its greatest revolutions come not from intention, but from chance embraced by persistence. I walk inland across a barren plain. The land is empty to my eyes, no trees, no grasses, no animals. The rocks are bare, their surfaces cracked by wind and rain. Yet I know that life is here, clinging invisibly to the soil, forming films across the surface, burrowing into cracks. It has not yet mastered the land, but it is trying. It will take hundreds of millions of years before plants cover this world, before forests rise. Yet already the seeds of that possibility are being tested. The wind rises, carrying dust across the plain. I close my eyes and feel it sharp against my skin. It reminds me that Earth has always been a restless planet, a place of constant motion. Nothing here is still, not the air, not the water, not the stones. Everything flows, everything transforms. To live is to be carried by that motion, to find meaning, not in resisting change, but in moving with it. I come to a river, its waters rushing, filled with sediments. I kneel at its edge and dip my hand in. The current is strong, pulling at me, carrying grains of rock from mountains to the sea. I watch them swirl in the water, and I realize that even these grains are part of life's story. They will feed the oceans with minerals, nourish microbes, shape ecosystems. Nothing is wasted. Even the erosion of stone becomes part of the cycle that sustains life. The continents drift slowly, carried by the motion of plates deep beneath the surface. I imagine watching from above, seeing them inch together into a supercontinent, then break apart again. Each shift changes the currents of oceans, the flow of air, the pattern of climates. These changes test life, force it to adapt, drive evolution forward. It is not cruelty, but creativity. The Earth itself is restless, and in its restlessness it creates opportunities. The rains come again, heavy and endless. They fall on the plains, on the rivers, on the seas. They carve the land, feed the waters, shape the face of the planet. I tilt my head back and feel them cool and steady. Each drop is ancient, each drop part of a cycle that has never broken. To feel the rain is to touch the continuity of Earth, to sense its memory. The rain that falls tonight outside my window is the same rain that once fell on these barren plains. It has been falling forever, and it will fall forever still. As I listen to the rain, I think of the cells drifting in the ancient seas. They are dividing, experimenting, forming new partnerships. Some fail, some succeed. Most vanish without trace, but a few carry forward, building slowly toward the future. It is a lesson in patience, in persistence. Change does not come in sudden leaps, but in slow, quiet steps. To live is to endure, to keep moving forward, even when the way is uncertain. I close my eyes and breathe deeply. The air I breathe, now rich in oxygen, is the gift of those ancient cells. Without them, I would not exist. My breath is their legacy, my body, their continuation. I am not separate from them, but part of their story. The earth whispers to me through that breath, reminding me that life is one unbroken continuous across time. The night deepens and the storm outside softens. I sit in silence, feeling the weight of time, the patience of the earth, the persistence of life. Complexity is beginning. The silence of this world will not last forever. Soon it will be broken by movement, by sound, by voices. But for now, it is a world in waiting, a world preparing, a world on the edge of awakening. The silence of this ancient world lingers as I move forward in thought, but beneath that silence I sense a quiet stirring. Complexity is no longer only an idea hidden within single cells. It is beginning to take form, to test itself against the challenges of a restless earth. The seas are not only chemical cauldrons anymore, they are nurseries of innovation. Each droplet holds possibilities. Each lineage experiments with ways of living, and though most will fail, a few will endure long enough to change the course of history. I imagine kneeling at the edge of a tidal flat as the sun lowers toward the horizon. The sky is faintly blue, streaked with pale clouds, the light softer than it once was under methane skies. Pools of water shimmer in the fading light, their surfaces alive with microbial films. Bubbles rise from them, breaking gently. I lean close and watch, knowing that within these pools, new forms of life are being tested. Some cells live alone, dividing endlessly. Others cluster together, cooperating, beginning the first experiments in unity. I cannot see them with my eyes, but I can feel their presence in the story unfolding. The land behind me is barren, wind-scoured, empty to the eye. Yet I know it is not truly empty. Life clings invisibly to rocks, spreads, as thin films on damp surfaces burrows into the soil. It has not yet mastered the land, but it has begun its first tentative steps. To think of this makes me reflect on beginnings themselves, how they are rarely grand, how they are usually fragile, almost invisible. The greatest revolutions begin quietly unnoticed in places where no one is watching. The river that flows across this land carries minerals to the sea, feeding microbes enriching ecosystems. I walk along its bank, listening to the rush of water over stone. The sound is timeless, the same sound I hear today when I stand by a river. Water is the most faithful constant of all carving, shaping, nourishing. It has never ceased, never paused, never forgotten. To touch it is to touch the whole history of Earth. In the oceans, cells continue their experiments. Some engulf others and form alliances. Some share their labor, dividing tasks becoming greater than the sum of their parts. These are the first whispers of multicellularity, the first fragile steps toward bodies. It is astonishing to imagine that what will one day become forests, animals, humans, all of it began in these small, quiet alliances of cells. I pause to reflect on this. So much of life depends on cooperation, on connection. Even at the cellular level, survival was not achieved by strength alone, but by unity. A larger cell welcomed a smaller one, and instead of destruction, there was partnership. From that act came mitochondria, the engines of complexity. From that act came every breath I take. To think of this is to realize that my life too is built upon connection, upon the unseen partnerships within my body and within my world. I step into the imagined ocean, the water cool against my skin. I float on its surface, looking down into the depths. The water is filled with life, though most of it is invisible to me. Microbes drift by the trillions, harvesting light, dividing, breathing. Among them are the ancestors of all complex beings, cells larger and more intricate, carrying within them the seeds of organs, tissues, bodies. They do not know what they carry, but I do. They are the future hidden in plain sight. The sky above deepens into twilight stars beginning to appear. I look up and imagine what it must have been like to see them then. The air is clearer now, less filled with haze, and the stars would shine more sharply. They have always been there, burning silently long before Earth formed, long before life began. To see them is to remember that Earth's story is not isolated, but part of a larger cosmos. The atoms in my body, the atoms in those ancient cells were forged in stars. To breathe, to live, is to carry the memory of the universe within me. I close my eyes and listen to the ocean, the steady sound of waves, the quiet hum of existence. This world is still silent compared to mine. No animals, no birds, no forests, but it is not empty. Its silence is filled with potential, with waiting, with slow preparation. I think of my own silences, the times in my life when nothing seemed to happen, when everything felt still. Looking back, I see now that those silences were not empty. They were preparing me, shaping me, building foundations for what was to come. The Earth's silence, too, is not absence but readiness. As oxygen continues to rise, the chemistry of the oceans shifts further. Iron is drawn out, forming rust-colored sediments on the sea floor. These layers will one day be mined by humans, turned into steel, into cities, into machines. Even now, long before I exist, the earth is preparing the materials of my world. The stones beneath me are not just silent matter. They are memory. They are resource. They are the hidden script of the future. The continents continue their slow drift, colliding, separating, shaping the globe. Supercontinents form and fracture each cycle, altering climates, driving evolution. I imagine standing on the shore of one such supercontinent, watching its vast expanse stretch into the horizon. It feels immense, unending, a world unto itself. Yet I know that it too will break, that nothing here is permanent. Permanence is the illusion, change the truth. The earth whispers this lesson over and over. Everything flows, everything transforms, nothing stays the same. The rains return in my imagination, falling steadily, feeding rivers, carving valleys, nourishing seas. I tilt my head up and let them fall upon me, cool and endless. Each drop is both ancient and new, both memory and beginning. They connect me to the earliest oceans, to the glaciers that will one day cover continents, to the rivers that will sustain civilizations. Water is the thread that binds all time, all life, all memory. I breathe deeply, and as I exhale, I feel the continuity of life within me. My breath is not only mine, it is the echo of ancient microbes, the inheritance of cells that learn to use oxygen, the continuation of a partnership formed billions of years ago. To breathe is to participate in history, to carry forward the work of generations unseen. The night deepens, and I sit in silence listening to the soft drizzle outside my window. The storm of my time is connected to the storms of that ancient world, each one part of the same cycle. I feel small in this vastness, yet also connected, included, remembered. I am not separate from Earth. I am its child, its witness, its continuation. The world of that time is quiet still, but no longer empty. Complexity is rising, fragile, but unstoppable. Soon, the silence will give way to sound, the movements of bodies, the stirrings of creatures, the voices of life. The earth is preparing patiently for the symphony to come. The earth. I wander in thought is no longer only a silent stage of microbes and stone. Something is building beneath the surface of time, something slow yet inevitable. Oxygen. The restless element has changed the air and the seas. The continents are larger, their mountains higher, their rivers longer. And within the oceans invisible to my eyes, life is beginning to sketch the outlines of forms it has never dared before. The silence is still here, but it trembles with anticipation, like a breath held too long. I stand on the shore of a shallow bay. The sea stretches wide and calm, its waters clearer than they have ever been. The sky above is brighter too, tinged with blue, scattered with white clouds drifting lazily. The wind carries the sharp scent of salt, the faint mineral tang of iron long since rusted and laid to rest on the sea floor. I crouch at the water's edge, trail my fingers through it, and feel its coolness flow around me. Within it, unseen but everywhere, cells divide, cooperate, and begin the first experiments in building larger bodies. I lean close in thought and imagine a single cell larger than most hosting smaller partners within it. What was once a predator-prey encounter has become something more, an alliance, a partnership that will never break. The smaller cells burn oxygen with incredible efficiency, producing energy while the larger cell protects and nourishes them. They live together, and together they become something new. This partnership is the root of eukaryotic life, the foundation upon which complexity will grow. It is astonishing to realize that every breath I take today is powered by these ancient alliances. My muscles move, my brain thinks my body lives because of mitochondria, once free living beings themselves, now part of me. I sit back on the sand and look out at the horizon. The waves roll in with their timeless rhythm, the same rhythm I hear today when I stand by a modern ocean. Nothing in that rhythm has ever stopped. Waves have been breaking on shores for billions of years, carrying the memory of every age. To listen to them now is to hear the voice of continuity, the patient voice of Earth itself. The continents behind me rise as vast expanses of rock, barren and silent. They are sculpted by wind, carved by rain, split by rivers. They feel empty to my eyes, yet I know they are not. Microbes coat their surfaces, fill their soils, cling to their cracks. Life is present even if unseen. It is testing, experimenting, waiting. Someday, plants will cover these continents, animals will roam them, forests will whisper in the wind. But for now, they are landscapes in waiting, patient canvases prepared for the future. The river I follow inland winds through valleys carrying sediments toward the sea. Its waters are rich with minerals feeding microbes in its current nourishing ecosystems at its mouth. I kneel by its bank, dip my hand into the flow, and feel the strength of its current. Each grain of sand it carries is a fragment of mountains worn down, a memory of peaks once tall. The river is not only moving water, it is moving time itself, carving the land, shaping the future. I pause and think of the rains that feed it, falling endlessly through the ages. Each drop is ancient, part of the cycle that has never broken. The rain that falls tonight outside my window is the same rain that fell on these ancient valleys, the same rain that carved the first rivers, the same rain that filled the earliest oceans. To touch it is to touch continuity, to feel the thread that binds all life together. The oceans deepen in my imagination, and within them, life experiments further. Some cells cluster together, forming chains, sheets, hollow spheres. They are fragile, often falling apart, but sometimes they endure. They discover that together they can grow larger, predators reach more sunlight. These first multicellular experiments are not yet animals or plants, but they are their ancestors. The leap from single to many is being tested again and again, until eventually it will succeed. I close my eyes and imagine drifting in that sea, surrounded by microscopic forms, invisible without a lens. I see chains of cells, simple filaments swaying with the currents. I see hollow spheres delicate as glass, shimmering as they move. I see clumps of cells dividing tasks, some gathering energy, others supporting structure. It is a world of experimentation, of fragile beginnings, of quiet revolutions. And though none of these forms will last unchanged, their legacy will echo forward into the great diversity to come. The supercontinent of this time stretches across much of the globe, a vast expanse of barren rock. I climb in thought to the top of a ridge and look out across it. The landscape is harsh, empty to the eye, yet majestic in its scale. Rivers carve through valleys. Winds scour plateaus, glaciers creep in places where the climate cools. The earth is alive with motion, even when its surface seems still. To stand here is to feel the patience of geology, the slow work of mountains rising and falling, the endless cycle of creation and erosion. I pick up a stone and turn it in my hand. Its surface is rough, its weight solid, yet I know it is not eternal. It was once melted in the earth's mantle, lifted by collisions, broken by weather, carried by rivers. One day, it will be sand, perhaps buried, perhaps melted again. Even the hardest stone is a moment in a larger flow, a single note in Earth's endless song. I think of my own life fleeting by comparison, and I see that permanence is an illusion. Change is the only truth. As oxygen rises still further, the world cools in cycles. Ice spreads, glaciers advance, then retreat. Life faces these challenges, retreats into refuges, persists until warmth returns. Each trial strengthens. It selects for resilience, pushes evolution forward. I think of my own winters, the cold seasons of my life when everything seemed barren, and I remember that spring always follows that warmth, always returns. That persistence is the essence of survival. The earth teaches this lesson again and again. The night falls slowly over this imagined world. The sky deepens, stars emerge bright and sharp without modern haze. I look up and feel their presence. They have always been there long before life began, long before Earth itself existed. The atoms in my body and the cells drifting in the sea were forged in their furnaces. To see them is to remember that I am not only of Earth, but of the universe. My life, like all life, is the universe remembering itself. The silence of this time remains, but it is no longer empty. It is filled with waiting, with preparation, with quiet revolutions unfolding unseen. Complexity is coming. The stillness of the earth is not the stillness of absence, but the stillness before awakening. I sit in thought, listening to the waves, the wind, the rain, and I feel that awakening drawing closer. The ocean lies before me again in imagination, vast and deep, stretching to horizons without end. Its surface is calm, rippled by the wind, carrying the faint scent of salt. Beneath it, unseen but everywhere, life continues its patient work. The cells that learn to cooperate, to cluster together, to share their energy, are slowly becoming something more. Each division, each experiment, each fragile step adds to the long story of complexity. The earth does not rush. It has all the time in the world. I wade into the shallows, the water cool against my skin, and gaze down into the rippling pools. Stromatolites still rise here, layered monuments of microbial work, bubbling oxygen into the air. But they are not alone anymore. Filaments of cells sway in the current, colonies cling to the rocks, tiny eukaryotic forms drift like dust motes in the light. They are small, delicate, almost invisible to me. Yet within them lies the architecture of the future. These are the ancestors of all plants, all animals, all fungi. In their chemistry, in their fragile structures, they carry the blueprint of forests, oceans, and mines. I crouch closer, letting the water run through my hands. It glitters in the sunlight, reflecting the sky above. I know that within this water are molecules of oxygen dissolved and reactive, shaping the destiny of the seas. The oxygen is both gift and danger. It fuels energy, but it also burns, damaging those unprepared. Life is tested with every breath, every reaction. Those who can endure will carry forward. Those who cannot will vanish. It is a harsh lesson, but it is also the way of creation. I step back onto the shore and walk inland. The land is silent, barren to my eyes, but alive in hidden ways. Microbes cling to the soil, films spread in damp crevices, colonies grow in cracks of stone. They are the pioneers of the land, fragile and unseen. Someday, plants will root themselves here, forests will rise, animals will roam. But now the land waits in quiet anticipation. The silence feels heavy, not with emptiness, but with possibility. The continent I cross is vast, stretching far into the horizon. Rivers cut through it, carrying sediments to the sea. Mountains rise in the distance, sharp and jagged, their slopes scarred by glaciers. I climb in thought to one of their ridges and look out across the world. The air is sharp with oxygen, thinner than what I breathe today, but still richer than in ages past. The view stretches endlessly, rivers winding like silver threads, plains vast and bare, oceans shimmering under the sun. It is a young world still forming, still waiting, but beautiful in its silence. I pick up a stone from the ridge, turn it in my hand, and think of its history. It was once molten part of the restless mantle. It cooled, was lifted by collisions worn by rain, carved by ice. It has traveled through cycles of fire and water, mountain and sea. Now it rests in my hand, solid and quiet, yet still part of the endless flow. I realize again that nothing is truly still. Even the hardest stone is a moment in time, destined to change, to move, to be reborn. The oceans, meanwhile, are experimenting with forms more daring. Some clusters of cells learn to stick together permanently, not as colonies, but as bodies. They begin to specialize. Some cells gather energy, others provide structure, others defend. It is the first whisper of true multicellularity. Fragile, imperfect, often failing, but real. These early bodies are not yet animals, not yet plants, but they are the foundation from which all such life will arise. I imagine peering through a microscope of thought at one of these forms. It is small, no larger than a speck of dust, but within it is division of labor, cooperation, unity. It sways with the currents, delicate and simple. Yet I know that in this simplicity lies the seed of everything to come. The leap from single to many is not just a biological change. It is a philosophical one. It is the recognition that to endure one must be part of something greater, that unity creates strength beyond what the individual can hold. The earth itself reflects this truth. Continents join into supercontinents, then break apart, then join again. Oceans open and close, climates shift, ecosystems transform. Unity and division. Gathering and separation. These are the rhythms of geology mirrored in the rhythms of biology. To live is to be part of these cycles, to flow with them rather than resist them. As I walk along the shore once more, the tide rising, I think of the rains that feed it. They fall endlessly, carving valleys, filling rivers, nourishing seas. Each drop is ancient, each drop part of the same cycle. The rain tonight outside my window is the same rain that fell on these shores, the same rain that sculpted mountains, the same rain that filled oceans. Water is the eternal witness, the thread that binds every age together. I close my eyes and listen to the waves. They crash softly against the rocks, their rhythm timeless. They have never stopped, not once, since the first oceans formed. To hear them now is to hear the voice of eternity, the patient whisper of earth itself. The silence of this world is not empty. It is filled with that rhythm, with the quiet song of water, with the hum of unseen life. The stars appear as night falls. They are sharper, brighter, without modern haze. I look up and feel their presence. They have always been there, burning silently long before Earth was born. The atoms in my body and the cells drifting in the seas were forged in their furnaces. To see them is to remember that I am not only of Earth, but of the cosmos. My life, like all life, is the universe remembering itself. And as I sit there between sea and sky, between silence and anticipation, I feel the future pressing close. The great awakening is coming. Life has learned to breathe oxygen, to build bodies, to endure ice and fire. The silence of Earth will not last much longer. Soon the oceans will explode with diversity, with creatures of strange forms, with movements unseen before. The symphony is waiting just beyond the horizon. The earth is preparing patiently for the song of life to begin. The earth has grown older still. The restless patience of billions of years has carried it through fire, through ice, through silence. And now, beneath the calm surface of oceans, I sense a stirring unlike any before. The atmosphere holds more oxygen than ever, still not as rich as the air I breathe tonight, but abundant enough to fuel change. The seas are not only alive with microbes, they are filled with new possibilities, new forms, quietly testing themselves against time. I stand in thought on a rocky shore. The tide is low, exposing stretches of microbial mats glistening in the sun. Stromatolites rise like rounded monuments layered by countless generations. They bubble oxygen into the air, their quiet labor unending. I crouch and place my hand upon one, feeling the roughness of its surface slick with life. These ancient structures are still here, still thriving, but they are no longer alone. Around them in the waters, something new is stirring. I wade into the shallows, the water cool and clear. Tiny forms drift here, some only filaments of cells, others hollow spheres, others colonies clinging together. They are simple, fragile, invisible to my eyes. Yet within them lies the promise of bodies of creatures of motion. The leap from single-celled to multicellular is happening quietly repeated, endlessly tested, and refined. Most attempts will fail, but some will endure. It is here in these waters that the blueprint of animals begins to take shape. I close my eyes and imagine peering into the water with a lens that reveals what I cannot see. In the shimmering light, I see tiny clusters of cells dividing tasks. Some gather energy, some hold structure, some protect. It is cooperation, unity, partnership. The first whisper of what will one day become tissues, organs, nervous systems. These fragile beginnings are the ancestors of everything complex, the ancestors of me. I float in imagination upon the surface of the sea, listening to the gentle lap of waves. The rhythm is timeless, the same rhythm that has carried through every age. It soothes, yet beneath it, I feel the tension of anticipation. This ocean is not the quiet place it once was. It is a laboratory, a workshop, a cradle. Life is building towards something immense, though it does not know it. The continents stretch behind me, vast and barren, their surfaces empty of forests or animals. Rivers carve through them, carrying minerals to the sea. Glaciers creep across high ridges, leaving valleys carved deep. Volcanoes erupt their fire, feeding the atmosphere with gases. The land is restless, the air is restless, the sea is restless. And life within this restlessness finds opportunity. I walk inland across a plain of stone. The ground is cracked by heat, split by rivers worn by wind. To my eyes it seems empty, but I know it is not. Microbes cling to every surface, forming films too thin to see. They burrow into soils spread across damp ground, persist in cracks of rock. The land is alive, even if it does not yet show it in forests or grass. Someday, plants will root themselves here, animals will roam, civilizations will rise. But for now, the land waits silent, patient. The river I follow glitters in the light, carrying sediments toward the sea. I kneel at its edge, dip my hand in, and feel the flow. The water is cool, alive with motion. Each grain of sand it carries is part of the mountain. It eroded, part of the valley it carved, part of the sea it will feed. The river is not only water, it is memory in motion, history flowing toward the future. As I listen to it, I think of the rains that feed it. They fall endlessly, cycle after cycle through every age. They fell on the first molten crust, on the oceans of the Archean, on the glaciers of the Proterozoic, and they fall still tonight outside my window. Each drop is both ancient and new, both a continuation and a beginning. To touch the rain is to touch eternity, to feel the persistence of Earth itself. In the oceans, new strategies emerge. Some cells engulf others, forming permanent alliances. The mitochondria, once free-living, are now the energy engines of larger cells. Other cells form partnerships with photosynthetic cousins, becoming the ancestors of algae and later of plants. These alliances are fragile, but they endure, and they open doors to futures that were impossible before. Life is not only surviving, it is innovating. It is dreaming new forms into being. I imagine peering into the sea again, seeing algae drifting in sunlight, capturing its energy, fueling growth. They are small, almost invisible, yet their presence transforms the ocean. They enrich the food webs, they shape the chemistry of water, they build the foundation for larger life. Without them, no forests could rise, no animals could feed, no civilizations could exist. They are humble, and yet they are the architects of abundance. The earth itself reflects this abundance. Oxygen levels rise, climates stabilize, continents grow larger. The cycles of ice and warmth continue testing life, selecting for resilience. Each trial makes life stronger, more adaptable, more creative. The earth is not cruel, though it feels harsh. It is simply patient, shaping life through challenge, refining it through time. I sit on the shore again, the waves lapping at my feet, and look out at the horizon. The silence of this world still feels heavy, but I know it will not last. Soon the oceans will fill with creatures that move with bodies, that hunt with eyes that see. The quiet is only the stillness before a symphony. I breathe deeply, and I feel the anticipation of it, the way one feels the air before a storm. Something immense is coming, and the earth is ready. The stars rise as night falls sharp and bright without modern haze. I gaze up at them and remember that they are older than all this, older than earth, older than life. The atoms in my body, in these seas, in these mountains, were forged in their fire. To see them is to remember that the story of Earth is part of a larger story, the story of the universe itself. Life here is not separate. It is the cosmos becoming aware, the universe remembering itself. And as I sit beneath those stars, between the sea and the land, between silence and anticipation, I feel the threshold near. The long patience of microbes, the slow accumulation of oxygen, the fragile experiments of multicellularity of it has led to this point. The earth is preparing to burst into life as it never has before. The Cambrian is waiting. The silence is almost over. The ocean before me feels different now. Its surface glitters in the sunlight, calm in appearance, yet beneath it, life is restless, stirring, building toward a transformation unlike any before. For billions of years, Earth has known only microbes, only the quiet work of invisible builders. But now, within these waters, complexity is preparing to break through. It is not yet visible to the naked eye, not yet the world of animals I know, but the foundations have been laid. The stage is almost ready. I stand in thought on the edge of a shallow lagoon. The tide has receded, leaving behind pools where microbial mats gleam in the light. Bubbles of oxygen rise, gently popping at the surface. I lean close and watch them, knowing that each bubble is more than gas. Each is a marker of change, a whisper of the future. Without these bubbles, no breath could ever be taken, no muscle could ever contract, no mind could ever awaken. They are the unseen architects of everything to come. I imagine kneeling beside one of these pools, peering into its depths. The water is alive with drifting cells, some simple, some intricate. Among them are the ancestors of algae, glowing faintly in the sunlight, capturing its energy and building sugars. Around them, colonies of cells cluster together, experimenting with unity, testing the limits of cooperation. These forms are fragile, fleeting, but they are real. They are the beginning of bodies, the blueprint of creatures. I close my eyes and imagine magnifying them, seeing the details hidden from sight. Within some of these cells are mitochondria, once free-living organisms themselves, now integrated, powering the larger cell with oxygen. Others carry chloroplasts descended from photosynthetic partners that became permanent residents. These tiny symbiotic alliances are the foundation of complex life. Without them, there could be no plants, no animals, no humans. They are the quiet revolutions upon which everything else depends. I sit back on the rock and breathe deeply. The air around me is sharper now, more oxygen than in ages past, though still thinner than what fills my lungs today. Each breath carries the memory of microbes, of alliances formed billions of years ago. My body is their continuation, my breath their gift. To breathe is to remember them, to carry them forward, to honor the patience of their persistence. The land behind me stretches vast and barren. Rivers cut across plains, carrying sediments toward the sea. Glaciers scar mountains, their weight grinding stone to dust. Volcanoes erupt, spewing ash and fire into the sky. To my eyes it seems harsh and empty, but I know it is not. Microbes cling to its soils, its rocks, its cracks. They are unseen pioneers preparing the land for the life that will one day follow. The earth is not empty, it is waiting. I walk along a riverbank, listening to the sound of water rushing over stones. The current is strong, carrying fragments of mountains toward the ocean. Each grain of sand is part of the earth's memory, a record of erosion, a fragment of history. The river sings softly, its voice eternal, its rhythm unbroken. It has always flowed, and it will always flow. To touch it is to touch the continuity of time. As I dip my hand into its water, I think of the rains that feed it. They have fallen through every age, unbroken, unceasing. They fell on molten crust, on Archean seas, on Proterozoic glaciers, and they fall still tonight outside my window. Each drop is both ancient and new, both beginning and continuation. Water remembers everything. To feel it is to feel the memory of Earth itself. The oceans deepen, and life within them grows more daring. Some cells form chains, others sheets, others hollow spheres. Some cluster into bodies, dividing tasks, cooperating as one. These are not yet animals, not yet plants, but they are more than individuals. They are beginnings, fragile experiments that will one day lead to the explosion of diversity. I imagine drifting through that water surrounded by invisible forms. Some glow faintly with captured sunlight, some move with tiny cilia, some cluster together into colonies. They are simple, and yet they are revolutionary. To see them is to see the first steps toward creatures, toward movement, toward the symphony of life that is coming. The continents continue their slow drift, colliding into supercontinents, then breaking apart again. Each collision raises mountains. Each separation opens seas. These movements change climates, redirect currents, alter ecosystems. They are the stagehands of Earth's play, shifting the scenery, preparing new backdrops for life to adapt to. The Earth is restless, and in its restlessness, it creates. I climb in thought to the top of a mountain ridge and look out across the world. The horizon stretches endlessly, plains barren and silent, rivers glittering like threads, oceans shimmering under the sun. It feels immense, eternal. And yet, I know it is not. This mountain too will wear down, will become sand, will feed the sea. Nothing is permanent. Everything flows. Everything transforms. The earth whispers this truth with every gust of wind, with every falling stone. As night falls, the stars appear sharp and bright in the clear sky. I gaze up and feel their presence. They are older than Earth, older than life, older than me. The atoms in my body and the cells drifting in the sea were forged in their fire. To look at them is to remember that I am not separate from the cosmos. I am its continuation, its memory, its awareness. Life on Earth is the universe remembering itself. The silence of this world remains, but it is heavy with anticipation. The microbes have built their oxygenated sky. The cells have forged their alliances. The first bodies have begun to form. All the conditions are in place. All the foundations laid. The Earth is ready. The Cambrian is near. I close my eyes and listen to the waves, their rhythm eternal. Soon, those waves will carry creatures unlike anything before, strange bodies, eyes that see, mouths that bite, muscles that move. The oceans will fill with motion, with sound, with diversity. The long patience of billions of years is about to give way to an explosion of life. The silence is almost over. The silence of the world has stretched for billions of years, patient and unbroken. But silence is never forever. The ocean before me, calm on the surface, carries within it a restlessness, a potential that can no longer remain hidden. The long preparation of microbes, the quiet alliances of cells, the steady rise of oxygen, all of it has led to this threshold. And now the threshold is crossed. I stand in imagination at the edge of a Cambrian sea. The tide washes gently across the sand, carrying with it tiny fragments of shells, faint glimmers of something new. For the first time, the oceans are not only filled with drifting cells and colonies, they are alive with bodies, creatures that move, that feed, that sense. The silence is breaking, replaced by the first whispers of a symphony. I wade into the shallows and gaze down into the water. The sight is unlike anything Earth has known before. Strange forms drift and crawl, soft-bodied creatures gliding across the sand, others swimming with flaps of tissue, others burrowing beneath the surface. They are small, many no larger than my hand, but their presence transforms the ocean. This is not the quiet microbial sea of ages past. This is a living theater filled with actors of shapes and strategies unimaginable before. One drifts past me, its body segmented, lined with bristles that move in rhythm, carrying it forward. Another crawls along the seafloor, its armor of plates gleaming faintly, its many legs carrying it with deliberate motion. Still, another glides overhead, propelled by broad fins, its body delicate as glass. Each creature is new, untested, yet alive with possibility. The diversity is staggering, as if life itself has suddenly discovered creativity and unleashed it all at once. I kneel in the water watching them. Their movements are awkward, tentative, but they are real. Some feed by filtering particles from the water, others graze on microbial mats, still others hunt. For the first time, predator and prey exist. For the first time, the ocean is not only a place of cooperation, but of conflict. The struggle for survival has changed. It is no longer only chemical. It is physical, immediate, alive. I imagine the first eyes opening in this sea, primitive but revolutionary. Light is no longer just energy to capture. It is information to see. To sense movement, to detect shapes, to find food, to escape danger. Eyes transform the ocean into a world of awareness. I feel their presence in my mind, those first crude visions, those first glimpses of form and motion. They are the ancestors of every gaze, including my own. To see is to live in a new way, and it begins here. The seafloor itself has changed. Burrowers tunnel through the sediments, churning them, mixing oxygen into places once still. The structure of the ocean floor is transformed by their movements. Ecosystems shift, food webs deepen, complexity rises. The earth itself is altered not only by microbes, but now by animals shaping their environment. It is the first true engineering of ecosystems, the first sign that life is no longer a passive passenger. I walk further into the imagined sea, the water rising around me, and I marvel at the diversity. Some creatures float like ribbons, delicate and translucent. Others scuttle with armored shells, their legs moving in perfect rhythm. Some swim with undulating flaps, others jet forward with sudden bursts. Each one is an experiment in form, a test of survival. The Cambrian explosion is not a single event, but a flood of innovation, a sudden unlocking of possibility. I pause to think of what has made this possible. Oxygen has risen high enough to fuel larger bodies to support muscles and movement. The alliances within cells, mitochondria. Chloroplasts provide energy and power. The genetic toolkit of life has expanded, enabling new patterns, new shapes, new complexity. The stage has been prepared for billions of years, and now the curtain has lifted. The land behind me remains barren, silent, waiting. But the ocean is alive with sound, soft clicks of shells, the ripple of movement, the quiet hum of life. I close my eyes and listen. It is no longer the silence of microbes. It is the beginning of the symphony of animals. I feel awe standing at this threshold, knowing that everything I see in my world, forests, birds, fish, mammals, humans, will trace its lineage back to this explosion of creativity. Night falls over the Cambrian Sea. The stars appear sharp and bright as they always have. But the ocean beneath them is no longer the quiet microbial soup it once was. It is a place of light and shadow, predator and prey, form and function. The stars look down on a world that has awakened. Life has discovered bodies, discovered motion, discovered vision. The universe through Earth has begun to see itself. I sit on the shore in thought, listening to the waves, watching the stars, and I feel the enormity of it. The silence has ended. The Earth has entered a new age, and though billions of years have passed since then, I feel the reverberations still in every breath, in every movement, in every heartbeat. I am part of that explosion, its continuation, its echo across time. The oceans stretch before me, vast and alive, but different now from those I knew in the Cambrian. The age of sudden experiments has passed. What remains is refinement, expansion, and abundance. It is the Ordovician period, and the Earth has grown restless again. Continents drift apart, seas widen, climates shift, and in these shifting seas, life flourishes as never before. I stand in thought on the shore of a shallow sea, the waves breaking gently against a coast that is empty of forests, empty of animals. The land remains barren, its rocks shaped by wind and rain, but the ocean before me is teeming. It is no longer a place of fragile beginnings. It is a world of established ecosystems of creatures that have found their place of diversity that fills every niche. The silence of the early Earth feels very far away. I wade into the shallows and peer down through the water. Trilobites still scuttle across the sand, their armor gleaming in the light. But they are joined now by new forms, brachiopods anchored to the seafloor, their shells opening and closing as they filter food from the water. Crinoids rise like delicate flowers, their feathery arms waving in the current, though they are not plants, but animals, rooted yet alive with motion. Sponges form towers, and alongside them, the first coral-like organisms begin to build structures that will one day become reefs. The seafloor has become a forest of stone and life intricate and alive. I swim deeper, the light shimmering above me, and I see the reefs more clearly. They are small compared to those of later ages, but they are real mounds of living stone built by corals and algae and sponges together. They shelter trilobites, houseworms provide food for grazing creatures. For the first time, ecosystems rise above the sea floor, creating habitats in 3 dimensions. The ocean has gained depth not only in water, but in life. Among the reef's shadows, something moves differently. A body shaped not like a trilobite or a sponge, but long, streamlined, and muscular. It darts forward with sudden motion. This is no soft-bodied drifter. This is something new, the first fish. Its body is armored in bony plates, its movement quick and decisive. It is small, primitive, but revolutionary. For the first time, a backbone exists in the sea. Vertebrates have arrived. I follow in thought the path of one of these early fish as it glides through the reef. Its eyes are sharp, its jaws not yet formed, but its body powerful. It is an experiment in a new kind of structure, one that will one day give rise to every vertebrate that walks, flies, or swims. To see it is to witness the first ancestor of all fish, all reptiles, all birds, all mammals, all humans. My own body is written here, hidden in the plates of this tiny, armored creature. The ocean above is filled with plankton, tiny drifting organisms that capture sunlight, building energy, and releasing oxygen. They are invisible to the naked eye, yet they sustain the world. Without them, there would be no trilobites, no corals, no fish. I think of them often, how the unseen supports the visible, how the smallest sustains the largest. The story of life is never only about what can be seen. It is also about the hidden, the forgotten, the overlooked. As I drift in thought through the Ordovician waters, I sense the balance of the ecosystem. Grazers feed on microbial mats, and algae predators hunt the grazers. Scavengers feed on the remains. Reefs rise currents, carry nutrients, oxygen fills the sea. It feels harmonious, as though life has found its rhythm at last. Yet I know that harmony on Earth is always temporary. Behind the abundance, change is coming. The continents continue their restless drift. They cluster near the equator, their shallow seas warm and fertile. But in time they will move, and climates will shift. Ice will spread across the poles, sea levels will fall, and ecosystems will collapse. The Ordovician will end in silence with a mass extinction that will wipe out most of this abundance. The Earth does not offer permanence. It offers cycles: creation and destruction, growth and collapse, expansion and silence. I walk along an Ordovician shore, the waves rolling in, carrying fragments of shells. I pick one up, a brachiopod, delicate and ridged, its pattern still visible. It belonged to a creature that lived in a reef, filtering water, feeding quietly, part of a web it never understood. It will vanish in the coming extinction, but its fossil will remain a memory etched in stone. To hold it is to hold both life and death, both abundance and impermanence. Night falls and the stars appear above the Ordovician sea. I gaze at them and think of the creatures below. They live without awareness of the stars, without knowledge of the cycles that shape them. Yet through them, the universe experiments with new forms: reefs, fish, ecosystems of staggering complexity. And through me, the universe remembers those experiments, reflects upon them, tells their story. I am not outside of this. I am the continuation of the Ordovician sea, its echo across time. I breathe deeply, listening to the waves, and I realize that the beauty of life lies not in permanence, but in its willingness to flow with change. The Ordovician seas are abundant now, but they will not remain so. And yet, their abundance will not be lost. It will be carried forward, transformed, reshaped into new forms, new ecosystems, new possibilities. The Earth is never finished. It is always becoming. The silence of extinction is waiting, but for now the ocean sings. Reefs rise, trilobites scuttle, fish dart, plankton drift. Life has found its rhythm, however brief. And in that rhythm, I hear not only the story of the Ordovician, but the story of myself. The seas of the Ordovician shimmer with life. I drift in imagination above them, carried gently by the current, and I look down on a world that feels almost complete. Every surface, every current, every shadow is occupied by creatures of infinite variation. The Cambrian gave birth to possibility. The Ordovician has expanded it into fullness. Beneath me, the seafloor is alive with brachiopods, their shells opening and closing as they filter the water. Crinoids rise like delicate flowers, swaying with the waves, their feathery arms catching drifting food. Sponges and corals cluster together, building reefs that grow upward, layer upon layer, creating habitats that teem with smaller creatures. Trilobites scuttle in the shadows, their antennae probing the ground, their legs moving with steady rhythm. Worms burrow through the sediment, their tunnels aerating the soil, creating new space for life to thrive. Above this bustling city of the sea, plankton drift in clouds, capturing sunlight, fueling the web of life below. Their abundance sustains everything, feeding filter feeders, nourishing grazers, supporting predators. Invisible to the eye, They are the true architects of the Ordovician world. Without them, the abundance I see would collapse into silence. And within this ocean, something new is rising. Small armored fish glide among the reefs, their bodies stronger, more coordinated, more efficient than the creatures around them. They are still primitive, lacking jaws, but their very presence is revolutionary. They are vertebrates, the ancestors of everything that will one day swim, fly, or walk on land. I follow one with my eyes as it darts through the water, its armor gleaming, its fins steady. It is a small thing, unremarkable compared to the reefs and trilobites, yet it carries within it the promise of the future. I swim deeper, and the light begins to fade. Here in the darker waters, I see nautiloid cephalopods, elongated shells with tentacles extending, drifting gracefully through the sea. Some are small, delicate, almost fragile. Others are vast predators of the deep, their tentacles grasping their shells, gleaming in the dim light. They are among the first great hunters of the sea rulers of this age. To see them glide is to see the first shadow of power that vertebrates will one day claim. The ocean is filled with balance, each creature part of an intricate web. Grazers feed on algae and microbial mats. Filter feeders catch drifting plankton. Predators hunt both, and scavengers clear the remains. It feels eternal, as though life has reached its perfect form. But I know better. On Earth, nothing lasts forever. Abundance is always temporary. Silence always waits. The continents drift slowly, gathering near the equator. Their shallow seas are warm, rich in nutrients, perfect for reefs and plankton. But as they move, climates begin to change. Ice begins to spread from the poles, silent and relentless. Sea levels drop. Shallow seas vanish. The habitats that sustain the Ordovician abundance shrink. The intricate web begins to fray. I imagine walking along an Ordovician shore as the climate shifts. The air is cooler, the winds sharper. The waves retreat further with each tide, revealing stretches of barren mud where once reefs thrived. Creatures lie stranded, their shells empty, their bodies fragile. The abundance that seemed eternal is fading. Extinction has arrived. It is the first great mass extinction, the first of many that will shape Earth's history. Most of the species I see will vanish, gone forever. Trilobites will survive, but their abundance will be cut. Reefs will collapse, their builders destroyed. The great nautiloids will dwindle, their dominance broken. The first great flourishing of life will end in silence, leaving only fragments, fossils, and echoes. I stand in thought on the shore, the waves cold against my feet, and I feel the weight of this loss. So much beauty, so much abundance gone. Yet I know that extinction is not an ending, but part of the cycle. Without it, there would be no space for what comes next. Without endings, there are no beginnings. The silence clears the stage so that new forms may arise. I pick up a fragment of coral washed ashore, its intricate lattice still visible. It was once part of a reef teeming with life, home to countless creatures. Now, it is only stone, fragile in my hand. Yet even as I mourn its loss, I know that reefs will return. Corals will rise again, stronger, more intricate, more enduring. This fragment is not only an end, it is a seed. Night falls over the Ordovician Sea, and the stars emerge above me. They shine with the same light they did over the Cambrian, the Archean, the Hadean. They shine with indifference, eternal and unbroken. Yet beneath them, the earth is restless, alive with cycles of creation and destruction. Life blooms, collapses, and blooms again. The stars watch silently, but through me, through every gaze, the universe remembers. I sit on the shore and listen to the waves. They sound eternal, but I know they are not. The coastline will change, the seas will shift, the reefs will vanish, the species will die. And yet, life will endure. The silence will pass, and in its place will come new abundance, new forms, new possibilities. The earth is not cruel. It is patient. It teaches through impermanence. The Ordovician has given me reefs, fish, cephalopods, abundance beyond imagining, and it has given me extinction, loss, silence. Both are part of the story. Both are necessary. To live is to exist within them, to be both fragile and enduring, fleeting and eternal. The stars shimmer above the waves, whisper below, and I breathe deeply. The Ordovician is ending, but life is not. The silence is real, but so is the promise of renewal. The story continues. It always continues. The silence of extinction still lingers in the air, like a shadow that has not yet lifted. The oceans feel emptier now, their reefs collapsed, their abundance diminished. The great flourishing of the Ordovician has ended, and what remains is fragile. Yet in this fragility, there is also resilience. The earth does not stay silent for long. In the Silurian, life begins again. I stand in thought on the edge of a shallow sea, the waves lapping gently at my feet. The shoreline looks barren, but the water is alive, if quieter than before. Survivors of the extinction endure here, trilobites scuttling across the sand. Brachiopods clinging to rocks, small fish darting in the shallows. They are fewer, their ecosystems broken, but they persist. Life always persists. I wade into the water and look down at the sea floor. Where once vast reefs rose, now small clusters begin to appear again. Corals, fragile but determined, start to build. Sponges rise from the sediment, filtering patiently. Slowly, piece by piece, the architecture of reefs is returning. It will take millions of years, but the ocean remembers. The silence has cleared the stage, and now the builders return to their work. Among the rocks, I see armored fish, their bodies plated in bone, their movements sharp and deliberate. They are larger now, stronger than the fish of the Ordovician. Their presence marks a turning point. Vertebrates are rising. With their armor and their speed, they are predators of a new kind, shaping the ecosystems around them. Watching them, I feel a quiet recognition. This is where my own distant lineage begins to take shape. I drift further in thought into the sea, where the light fades into shadow. Here in the dim waters, sharks begin their story. Primitive, small, but unmistakable, they move with power and grace. Their skeletons are not of bone, but of cartilage, flexible and strong. They are not yet the rulers of the sea, but they carry the potential of dominance. To see them here is to witness the beginning of one of Earth's most enduring lineages. The seafloor is reshaped once more by burrowers, worms tunneling through the sediment, mixing oxygen, creating habitats. Their persistence humbles me. They survived the extinction, and they continue their quiet work, unseen but essential. They remind me that resilience is not only in the dramatic survivors, but in the humble, the overlooked, the patient. I swim back toward the shore and notice something different. On the rocks at the water's edge, a thin green film clings. It is algae thriving in the spray of waves reaching beyond the sea. It is not yet a forest, not yet a meadow, but it is the beginning of life on land. These fragile pioneers will pave the way for mosses, for ferns, for trees. The Earth's barren continents are beginning to change. I kneel beside the rocks and touch the algae in my imagination. It feels slick, fragile, easy to wash away. Yet it endures, clinging to stone, photosynthesizing, capturing sunlight, feeding itself. Its presence is small, but its significance immense. This is the first step in a long journey that will transform the continents, that will cover the land in green, that will make possible the animals that will one day follow. The air above me is different too. Oxygen levels rise slowly, carried upward by photosynthesis, sustained by algae in the sea and on the rocks. The atmosphere is changing, becoming richer, more breathable. The Earth is preparing, though unconsciously, for the next stages of life's story. I walk along the shoreline as night falls, the stars glittering above. I think of the silence of the extinction, the emptiness it left behind. And I think of this recovery, fragile but steady. The Earth is not kind, not gentle, but it is persistent. It does not allow abundance to last forever, but it does not let silence endure either. It flows between them, unending. I close my eyes and listen to the waves. They carry the rhythm of resilience, of renewal of beginnings. The Silurian is not as dramatic as the Cambrian, not as abundant as the Ordovician, but it is profound. It is the age of recovery, of stability, of first steps onto land. It is the quiet moment between storm and storm, where life regathers itself, strengthens, and prepares for what comes next. I breathe deeply, the cool air filling me, and I understand. Extinction is never the end. It is part of the cycle. The Silurian whispers this truth, that life, though fragile, is also unbreakable. It may collapse, it may vanish, but it will always return. Always. The waves before me whisper softly, as though carrying a secret. The silence of extinction has faded, replaced not with the sudden explosion of abundance, but with something quieter, resilience. The Silurian is an age of slow healing, of cautious expansion. The reefs rebuild, the fish diversify, and for the first time, the land begins to awaken. I walk along a rocky shore, the tide low, the air cool and damp. Pools of seawater remain trapped among the stones, each one filled with tiny creatures. I kneel and gaze into one of them, and I see life carrying on. Small arthropods scuttle across the sand. Filter feeders wave their delicate appendages. Algae drape themselves across rocks. These are the survivors enduring rebuilding. Their persistence is quiet but powerful. I step into the water and wade toward a reef that rises just offshore. It is not yet as vast as the reefs of later ages, but it is alive, vibrant with color and form. Corals cluster together, their skeletons forming intricate patterns. Sponges rise like towers, filtering endlessly. Crinoids wave their arms like fields of grass, catching food carried by the current. Tiny fish dart in and out of the coral, their armored plates gleaming. This reef is a monument to recovery, a sign that life once diminished will always find its way back. I swim above the reef and watch as fish move in schools, their bodies coordinated, their motion fluid. They are small, but their numbers are many. Their fins guide them with precision, their eyes sharp, their senses tuned to the rhythms of the water. These are no longer the primitive armored fish of the Ordovician. They are more agile, more varied, the beginnings of a lineage that will dominate the seas. Vertebrates are rising, and their rise is unstoppable. Among them, I notice new forms, fish with stronger fins, more efficient, jaws, better vision. Some are hunters, sleek and fast. Others are grazers, feeding quietly among the reefs. Diversity has returned, not as sudden as the Cambrian, but steady, deliberate. Evolution has found new pathways, new strategies, new experiments. Watching them, I feel the echo of my own body in theirs, the backbone, the muscles, the eyes. I carry their story within me. I drift further into the sea, where the light grows dim. Here I see the first sharks, small but unmistakable. Their bodies are flexible, their motion fluid, their skeletons made not of bone, but of cartilage. They are predators, their senses keen, their presence undeniable. They are not yet the rulers of the ocean, but they will be. To see them here is to witness the birth of a lineage that will endure for hundreds of millions of years. As I watch them, I reflect on the persistence of lineages. Some vanish, erased by extinction, leaving only fossils. Others endure, adapting, reshaping, continuing across ages. The shark is one of those. Its form is so effective, so enduring, that it will remain with little change, while continents rise and fall, while other lineages flourish and fade. There is a lesson in this. Sometimes survival is not about constant innovation, but about stability, efficiency, patience. I return toward the shore, and there I see something that fills me with quiet wonder. Along the rocks, thin green plants have begun to grow small and fragile, but rooted in the soil. They are moss-like, simple, without true roots or leaves, but they are plants living on land. This is new. For the first time, life has reached beyond the sea and claimed the continents. I kneel beside one of these small plants in thought. Its body is delicate, vulnerable to drying, dependent on water, but it endures. It photosynthesizes, capturing sunlight, building energy, releasing oxygen. It anchors itself to the rock, clings against the wind, survives in the spray of waves. Its presence is small, but its impact profound. It is the first pioneer of a green world that will one day cover the continents. I imagine the land without plants, bare rock, barren soil, lifeless deserts. And then, I imagine it with them, forests, meadows, rivers, lined with trees, ecosystems of staggering complexity. That future begins here, with this fragile moss, this quiet pioneer. To witness it is to witness the first step in a journey that will change the face of the earth. The air above me carries more oxygen now produced by algae and plants. The atmosphere is changing slowly but steadily. It will one day sustain vast forests, insects, animals. But for now, it feels thin, delicate, a whisper of what is to come. I breathe deeply, imagining the weight of that oxygen, the way it fills my lungs. I am breathing the memory of these pioneers, their gift to every future creature that will one day walk the land. Night falls again, the stars glittering above the sea. I sit on the shore listening to the waves, watching the sky. I think of extinction, of recovery, of resilience. The Ordovician ended in silence, but the Silurian hums with renewal. Life has not only survived, it has grown stronger, more diverse, more daring. It has reached beyond the sea, onto land, into new possibilities. The stars shine with their eternal light, but I know that the earth beneath them is restless, always changing. Life flows with that restlessness, adapting, enduring, reaching further. The Silurian is not an age of explosions, but of persistence, of patience, of small steps that will lead to great transformations. I breathe in the cool night air and close my eyes. I feel the rhythm of the waves, the presence of the reef, the persistence of the plants. And I understand survival is not only about strength, but about resilience. Not only about abundance, but about endurance. The Silurian whispers this truth with every wave, with every leaf of moss, with every darting fish. The silence of extinction is gone. In its place is a quiet song of recovery, a melody of resilience that will carry forward into the ages to come. The earth is never finished, it is always becoming. And I, sitting here in thought, am part of that becoming, its echo, its witness, its continuation. The sea stretches before me, calm under the weight of the sun, and I feel a change in its depth, in its pulse. The silence of extinction is long past, the resilience of the Silurian has done its work, and now the earth is ready for something greater. This is the Devonian, the age of fishes, and it is a world in bloom. I stand on a coastline unlike the barren rocks I once knew. Here the land itself is beginning to green. Mosses cling to stones, their roots shallow but steady. Small vascular plants rise above them, their stems upright, their bodies firmer. They are still low to the ground, fragile in the wind, but they are taller than moss, more ambitious than algae. They are the first pioneers of forests, the builders of a new world above the tide. I walk inland in thought and see patches of plants scattered across the plain. They are not yet trees, not yet towering, but they are present, spreading, photosynthesizing, weaving oxygen into the air. Their presence reshapes the soil, stabilizes the ground, creates shade and shelter. Insects have not yet come to join them, nor animals to graze, but their existence changes the earth all the same. The land is no longer silent. It is beginning to breathe. I return to the shore where the ocean glitters, and I wade into the shallows. Beneath the water, life has expanded into an astonishing diversity. Fish of every size and shape swim here, their bodies armored, their jaws powerful, their movements fluid. Some are small and quick, darting through coral reefs. Others are massive armored giants, their heads heavy with plates, their jaws strong enough to crush shell and bone. To see them is to see power unleashed, a new mastery of the ocean. I drift in thought above a reef, and it takes my breath away. The corals have grown vast, their skeletons towering, their structures intricate. Sponges, crinoids, brachiopods, and countless other creatures fill the spaces between. Fish glide through the coral, weaving between towers of stone and life. It is a living city more immense than anything the earth has known before. The Devonian reefs are among the greatest in history, ecosystems of staggering beauty and abundance. And among the fish I see new forms. Some have strong fins, almost limbs capable of supporting their weight for brief moments on the sea floor. Others have lungs as well as gills, able to breathe air when the water grows shallow. These are the pioneers of a new world, vertebrates that will one day leave the ocean and walk on land. Watching them, I feel the future stirring, the first steps of a journey that will lead to reptiles, mammals, birds, and humans. I imagine one of these fish rising to the surface, gasping in the air, its lungs filling with oxygen. It does not know it is making history. It does not know that it is the first of its kind. It simply survives, moving where it must, adapting to its environment. Yet its survival is a revolution. It is the opening of a new door, the first breath of a lineage that will fill the land with creatures of every shape and size. The oceans are still dominant, still filled with power and diversity, but I cannot take my eyes off the land. The plants are spreading. Some grow taller, branching their stems, thickening their leaves, broadening. They are not yet forests, but they are forests in waiting. Their roots reach deeper, breaking rock into soil, preparing the land for more life to come. With them, oxygen in the atmosphere rises higher, the air becoming richer, more vibrant. The land is not empty anymore. It is preparing quietly, patiently, for animals to join it. I sit on a rock at the water's edge and look across both worlds, the ocean alive with fish, the land alive with plants. It feels like a threshold, a moment of transition. The earth is no longer the world of oceans alone. It is becoming a world of seas and forests, of reefs and rivers, of creatures that will one day walk, run, and fly. As I listen to the waves, I think of the pattern I have seen so many times. Explosion, collapse, renewal. The Devonian is not immune to this rhythm. Its reefs will one day fall, its giants will vanish, its abundance will end in extinction. But for now it thrives, and its thriving is magnificent. Life has reached a new height, and for a moment, the earth sings in harmony. Night comes and the stars emerge as they always do. They shine above reefs and forests alike, indifferent and eternal. Yet through the eyes of fish, through the photosynthesis of plants, through the first breaths of lungfish, the universe is beginning to change itself into awareness. It is beginning to prepare for creatures who will one day look back at the stars and wonder. I close my eyes, the night breeze cool on my face, and I breathe deeply. The Devonian is abundant, but more than that, it is a threshold. It is the moment when the ocean prepares to give its children to the land, when forests prepare to grow, when the earth begins to resemble the world I know. To witness it is to witness the earth dreaming of the future. The ocean before me feels different now, vast and heavy with abundance. I drift in imagination above it, watching as fish of every size and shape move through the water. The Devonian is their age, their dominion, and the seas have become their kingdom. Some are armored giants, their jaws capable of crushing bone and shell. Others are sleek hunters, their bodies agile, their eyes sharp. Still others are small forming schools that shimmer in the light, moving as one. The diversity is astonishing. It feels as though life has poured all its creativity into the ocean, filling every niche, every possibility. Below me, the reefs rise like underwater mountains, immense structures of coral algae and stone. They stretch for miles, sheltering countless creatures, providing food and safety, shaping the currents themselves. The Devonian reefs are larger than any that came before, greater even than many that will come after. They are cathedrals of life, monuments to persistence, fragile yet magnificent. I swim through their corridors in thought, watching trilobites crawl across their surfaces. Brachiopods filter water in steady rhythm. Crinoids wave their arms like fields of grass. Fish glide among them, their scales shimmering, their movements graceful. This reef is not only a structure, it is an ecosystem, a living city, a world within a world. To witness it is to feel awe not only at its beauty, but at its complexity. Life has woven itself into intricate webs, into systems of balance and interdependence. And yet, even as I marvel, I sense something beyond the beauty. Abundance on earth is never permanent. Every flourishing carries within it the seed of collapse. The reefs that stretch before me will one day fall silent, their corals dead, their structures crumbled. The giants that dominate the seas will vanish, their lineage broken. The Devonian, for all its magnificence, is not eternal. I turn my eyes toward the land, and there I see another transformation. The forests have grown, no longer just patches of moss and small plants, they are rising into something more. Trees, tall, branching with wood, and leaves begin to take their place. Their roots dig deep into the soil, breaking rock, creating fertile ground. Their leaves capture sunlight, their bodies release oxygen, their presence reshapes the atmosphere itself. I walk in thought among these early forests. The ground is damp, the air thick with the smell of green. The plants are silent, but their presence is immense. They stabilize the soil, create shade, alter the flow of rivers. They change not only the land, but the air, filling it with oxygen, changing the climate. These forests are the beginning of the earth, as I know it, the first step toward landscapes filled with animals, insects, and birds. I kneel beside a small stream that flows through the forest, its water clear, its banks lined with roots. I see amphibian-like creatures near the edge, fish with strong fins, lungs as well as gills, eyes that can see above the surface. They crawl clumsily onto the shore, gasping, then retreat back into the water. They are awkward, uncertain, but they are pioneers. Their struggle is the beginning of a revolution. One day, vertebrates will walk, run, leap, and fly. One day, their descendants will cover the continents. But it begins here with this fragile, awkward attempt to move onto land. I pause and imagine one of these creatures resting on the mud, its body heavy, its fins straining to hold its weight. It does not know it is making history. It does not know that its descendants will become reptiles, mammals, and humans. It simply survives. But its survival opens a door, and once opened, that door will never close again. The forests rise, the reefs flourish, the fish dominate. The earth feels alive, thriving, unstoppable. But I have seen this pattern too many times. I know what waits beyond abundance. The Devonian will not last forever. A shadow is falling slow and silent. Climate shifts. Sea levels change, oxygen in the oceans dwindles. The intricate web begins to fray. The reefs collapse, the giants vanish. The forests suffer. It is the Devonian extinction, one of Earth's great silences. I imagine walking along a Devonian shoreline as the extinction unfolds. The reefs that once dazzled with color are dead, their corals pale and lifeless. The fish that swam in abundance are gone, their shells empty, their skeletons scattered. The forests still stand, but the ecosystems around them falter. Silence spreads heavy and undeniable. And yet, even in this silence, I know the truth. Extinction is not the end. It is part of the cycle. The Devonian reefs collapse, but reefs will rise again. The armored giants vanish, but fish will endure, adapting, changing, becoming new forms. The amphibians crawling onto land will survive, carrying the lineage of vertebrates forward. Out of loss will come renewal, out of silence will come song. I sit on a rock and hold in thought a fragment of coral from a dead reef. It feels fragile, almost like bone, its lattice delicate. It is a memory of abundance, a memory of life. It is also a reminder that nothing lasts forever. The earth creates and the earth erases, and both are necessary. To mourn is natural, but to despair is to forget the cycle. Renewal always follows silence. Night falls, the stars glitter above, silent and eternal. They shine on the reefs, on the forests, on the amphibians crawling clumsily onto land. They shine on the extinction, too indifferent, unbroken. Yet through the creatures of the Devonian, through the forests and fish, the universe has changed itself. It has grown forests where once there were only rocks. It has created backbones, lungs, limbs. It has given the first breath of land to vertebrates. I close my eyes and breathe deeply. The Devonian is ending, but its legacy is vast. It has given us forests, fish, amphibians, vertebrates on land. It has written the first lines of a story that will one day lead to me. Its silence does not erase its gift. The Devonian sings still in every tree, every fish, every vertebrate that breathes. And so the Devonian draws to a close. The oceans that once dazzled with reefs and armored giants have grown quieter, their abundance shaken by extinction. The forests that began as fragile mosses now rise as green pillars, shaping air and soil, preparing the land for all that is to come. And in the shallow waters at the edge of those forests, creatures with fins that have become limbs take their first uncertain steps onto the shore. I sit with this moment in thought, listening to the waves, watching the stars, and I feel both the beauty and the impermanence of it. Every age flourishes, every age declines, and yet nothing is truly lost. Each silence carries the seed of renewal. Each ending prepares the way for a new beginning. The Devonian has given the earth forests, fish, and the first pioneers of land, and its legacy continues in every vertebrate that breathes today. This is the rhythm of Earth's story, creation and collapse, silence and song, fragility and resilience. To remember, it is to remember myself, to recognize that I too am part of this long, unbroken flow. Thank you for joining me on this journey through time. If you found peace, wonder, or meaning in these reflections, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who may find comfort in the story of our planet. There is so much more to explore. The Devonian has ended, but the Carboniferous waits ahead, a world of endless forests, vast swamps, giant insects, and new life that will transform the earth once more. Until then, may you find rest, may you find peace, and may you carry with you the quiet wisdom of the Earth's story. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you in the next chapter.